What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Season Gaming Halo Infinite Spoilercast special with this huge group of misfits you see in front of you. We are approximately 10 minutes late, and you can blame each and every one of them for that. So I am your host, Ainsley Bowden. We've got a big crew, as you can see here tonight, and we're going to be talking everything Halo Infinite's main campaign and story. Plot points, history, lore, etc. You've got a wide mix of opinions and Halo knowledge sitting here in front of you as well. So anyway, we're going to keep introductions short because there's way too many of us to go through in detail, and I think everyone watching this or who will watch this in the future knows all of us. So I'm your host, Ainsley Bowden, and I'll just go around the horn here. So to my right, Xbox creator, host of the Xbox 2 himself, Mr. Rand Outdoor 19. What's up, brother?
What's going on? Thanks for having me, Ains. And it's going to be fun talking about some Halo. Yeah, you already know how I feel. So.
I know. I'm waiting for you to bring out your qualm, so we'll get there. Next to him is my good friend Dr. Mo over there, host of the Backlog Chronicles podcast and avid Halo player on the squad. What's up?
What's up, brother, man? Good to be here with everybody. Let's get it going, man. I've been excited. What a way to end this, Monday, baby.
You know him as One Bad Mother. He's my friend over there from Xbox Era. What is happening, Abe?
Oh, thanks for having me, Ains, especially to talk Halo, because I like Halo. I like it a lot.
A lot. A lot.
It's a hell of an intro, Abe. Hello, him, the video editor for Windows Central Gaming. Everyone knows him well. Mr. Miles is back again. What's up, dude?
What is going on, everyone? Look at all these beautiful boys here getting ready to dive into some Halo. I'm excited. I too have talked to Rand. I've talked to a lot of people about where they sit with Halo's campaign, and
yeah,
it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. I haven't talked to you, Miles, so I'm interested to hear. So
yes,
yep. Then you know him, host of the Trophy Room. You know him as Mr. Bad Take, as we all do. Mr. Joseph Moran. What's up, brother?
What am I doing here?
I don't know. I don't know
either.
In fact, the symmetry of the screen works better if you just leave. I was just going to say.
Well, Halo is like Breath of the Wild or something.
Right.
He just committed the fucking one sin we didn't want.
Oh,
I'm happy to be here.
Next to him, my good man Jordan, Mr. Roadlight Pot, also co-host of the Backlog Chronicles, and avid Halo Squad member as well. What's up, dude?
What's up, Ains? Thanks for having me on here, man. It's so good to see all these guys here with us. It wasn't too long ago, and we had our own little kind of Halo talk, and now we're going to kind of come full circle here, so to speak. Oh, that's a pun. Yeah, boys, happy holidays, happy Halo days, and let's go. Travis, take it away, brother.
Let's go. Mr. Tie Guy Travis, my co-host of the Bitcast and also co-host of The Last Word. You know him well over there at IGN. What is happening, my friend?
McClunky, glad to be here. I have so many opinions.
Really?
We know. Oh, we know. But we're just talking Halo tonight. We're just talking Halo. Host of the Xbox Expansion Pass and our favorite ghost himself, Mr. Luke Lore.
What's up, guys? So thankful to be here with you guys. I'm sorry. Is the PlayStation man talking? Yeah, come on. I've been so excited to talk Halo and do Spoilercast stuff with you guys. I knew we were going to be doing this, so I'm just thankful to be here and so many opinions and thoughts myself.
All right. And last but certainly not least, good friend Eric, Mr. Game Positive himself and newest contributor to Season Gaming, actually. Welcome, brother.
Hey, what's up, everybody? So happy to be able to stand on the shoulders of some giants here. Thanks so much for inviting me. Can't wait to talk about Halo.
Nice and short and sweet. I like it, Eric. All right, guys. So
long-winded.
We've got a lot to talk about. There's a lot of broad opinions on this game, and obviously know where a few of you stand as we've had some conversations about it. I know for a fact there's people here that feel this is one of not only the best Halo game, but one of the best games in a long time. All the way to this isn't the best Halo game. So this should be fun tonight.
Wow. Okay, so who's wrong? Raise your hand if you're wrong.
Oh, we're going to find out.
Yeah. So I would, as I said, it's going to be too hard to kind of go scripted here, right? So everyone just be off the cuff. I think let's start with the kind of opening of the game. So
Should we do a
all of us
spoiler
know, and all of
warning
us.
now, or is
Oh
that
yeah,
just
yeah.
assumed?
Do a spoiler warning.
Spoiler cast.
Absolutely.
It's a spoiler cast. I mean,
I don't know. If you want to do
Guys.
a suggestion?
If
I don't know, have you
haven't
seen
played
Twitter
Halo
lately?
yet, you
It's
might
in
want to
the
leave.
title.
For those of whom who can't read, this
Maybe
is a
they click
spoiler
the
cast.
thumbnail. Maybe they click the thumbnail.
That's right.
Now's
Yeah.
your chance.
all right. Yeah. Go ahead and leave if you haven't played Halo. Okay, moving on. So let's start with the opening level. So, the game opens with a level that is very reminiscent and pays homage to Halo CE. It then follows into another linear level, which introduces the weapon. And if anyone talks bad about the weapon while the show is happening, they will be gone as well.
There's a lot of threats for this open-minded.
A lot of
threats.
forum.
Yeah.
Yeah,
lot of threats.
okay.
Yeah.
This is a hostile
I'm for it. I like
environment.
this.
I mean, that's a sin as bad as mentioning Breath of the Wild. So I agree right there, man.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
The weapon
And
is
then-
sacred.
And then as it opens up into that relationship, right, and finishes those two missions, it then opens up onto the ring. So, guys, I wanted to start with the fact that this opening to the game struck me very strongly. I think it's a very, very strong opening. It gave me a lot of kind of memories, nostalgia, etc., for when I first played Halo CE, especially once kind of that the Forerunner structure opens up and you finally look out onto the ring and realize you're about to go off onto your playground. And the weapon I found endearing pretty much right away, and there's a lot of similarity as well to when you first meet Cortana, right, in Halo CE. So what I wanted to kind of throw out to you guys first is exactly that, is the intro to the game before we get to the whole kind of open world segments, the intro to the game, the setup to the story. How'd you guys feel about it?
I'll start. I really liked it because I thought it allowed you to ease into kind of a comfortable Halo feeling, and then gradually introduce more mechanics. I thought it was beautiful, and it reminded players, excuse me, of what the art style they could expect from it. After such a big departure in 5 from art style, it allowed players to kind of feel at home within Halo and yet still see sort of the, forgive the pun, the evolutions of gameplay from before. I liked that a lot.
Yeah.
I'm gonna quickly mention the fact that we see him get the shit beat out of him as soon as the game starts. And that itself was so.
Thank you, Mo. I forgot.
That's so brutal and gut punching, man. You know, I mean, we've seen him up against the wall. You know, I mean, the fight with the Didact and whatnot. But man, he got manhandled. And then when he mentions it later on to the weapon, when he tells her, he's like, Atriox beat me brutally, surgically. And then I forgot what else he did. Precisely. Yes. Like, bro, you can't. I love the way that they started that off, right? Because that really set the tone for what he was up against. This ain't your daddy's covenant, baby.
Yeah. We're used to this guy being so feared, and there was one interview with Joseph Staten going, "Oh, they'll give him a different name other than Demon," and I love that it's Prey. Like,
yes,
it really throws Chief kind of up against what seemingly is an unwinnable situation and an unwinnable foe. So like Atriox, if you don't know him and you haven't read the books, you immediately know in the first 60 seconds that this guy's not to fuck with.
Yeah.
It also told you that he was not actually dead. The moment he bodied Chief, you knew that he wasn't dead.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that was
100%.
one of the things I saw. Like, so I played the first 2 missions like a couple months ago for part of IGN's coverage, and like as soon as it got to the part where it was like, oh, Atriox dead, I was like, that's not true. And then they were like, oh, and Cortana's dead, and I was like, that's not true either. Like, that's clearly they wouldn't just do that at the beginning.
When Ains and I were reviewing the game, that was the first thing I mentioned him. I'm like, I'm calling bullshit on Atriox.
Yeah, of course.
Oh,
Dude,
by the
they
way,
would never
side
kill
note,
Atriox. He's such a like important character in the what's the point of introducing him in Halo Infinite in the mainline games if you're just
and he has such a great you know, not arc but purpose as well, because it comes out of the same place from Chief, just a different type of hurt. They both come at this situation hurt, and it's personal to them. It's just a different reason.
You're talking about Escharum or Atriox?
Atriox, and technically Escharum as
Escharum, it kind of applies as well. Yeah.
What I love about the intro of this game, and really the overall theme, is we love Master Chief. We've been on this journey with Master Chief for a long time. They don't always do the best job of humanizing him. He's always this huge, larger than life hero. And all these beats in Halo Infinite show that he is a human. He can be beat. He can be hurt. He can feel things. And they do an amazing job in the intro to this, really setting that tone that Master Chief is more than this suit. He's more than this armor. There is this human side to him. And that is set up immediately, and that is carried throughout the entire campaign. And I love that dynamic because, again, I love Chief, but he hasn't always been the best, or he hasn't always been the most relatable figure in Halo.
No,
in fact, 4.
I was going to say, before 4, that was one of the major complaints about people like us who love Chief, is like, well, what do you love about him? You know, and it was kind of hard to... Yeah, he's a badass, but it was kind of hard to explain. And then when 4 hit and they humanized him for the first time in the games, because there's a lot of stuff in the books that talk about different aspects, right? But in the games, that's when 4 really had a big impact on me. I know, and I know some, many others as well.
5 too.
Well, and I think the thing it did is it just made him seem vulnerable, right? It's hard to feel sympathy or empathy for somebody that just seems invincible. And I even thought, like, for me, and I know like they played into some of the emotional stuff in 4, but it's almost like they gave him almost like superpowers, right? Like he was like invincible to certain things, when everybody else got melted around him. And I just feel like, he always came across as very invincible. And I think that was like a power fantasy for a lot of people, but that's also the thing that made it hard to connect. And it is even like from the end of this game, it is like more of an uphill climb, right? You're trying to build towards something and, you haven't really reached that peak matchup yet. They're kind of keeping that out there. And I'm jumping ahead right now, but I think that was something that was needed. That was needed to get people to actually care again, to be invested. That he's just not out here just like they started Halo 5 and it was like they're just whipping everybody's ass. They made it look so easy there, right? You got in the games like they're definitely not filming this in Legendary, obviously.
Well, they did.
Oh, go ahead.
I would say they did a good job of that humanizing element as well in Steve Downs' performance and in the motion capture. Chief looked tired in everything, and just like the little subtleties that really helped. So the people that have not read the books are going to see a different type of soldier man moving around, and like just the little subtle things in his voice, the tone, the inflection, and the way he moved, far less purposeful than in Halos prior.
Yeah.
I was going to say that
on past the opening. I think we should give a shout out to the cargo boxes storage container section where they're all falling and you're jumping around. That's like really cool. And I kind of was hoping we'd see more stuff like that in the later levels. Obviously you're doing a lot in the open world, but the actual story levels, there are a lot of like shooting hallways, like traditional Halo stuff. And I kind of liked the more dynamic. It kind of reminded me of Titanfall. Those levels, especially since you have a grapple hook. Speaking of which, was anybody else like put off by the fact that he has a grapple hook on his suit from the very beginning and they don't mention it at all? Like, I know it's like a small detail, but like literally from the first cutscene, he's like, I got a grapple hook. It's just always been here, right? It's always been a part of my suit.
I mean, if we get into that, then we got to ask why there's those containers that we can throw all around Zeta Halo.
His suit was up. Well, wasn't it part of the? Wasn't it part of the suit upgrade after Halo 5? That's the Gen 2. Or
it's in the books.
Yeah,
it's in the books.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And that YouTube.
Travis, you're supposed to be the lore guy here.
I knew. I'm wondering what your guys' perspective is, because that's like something. I have a lot of casual gamer friends, and when I talked to them about it, they were like, "Dude, I was lost as soon as the story started. Like, I didn't know who Atriox is. Like, what happened to evil Cortana? What happened to the Guardians? What happened to the Prometheans? Like, all these questions." And I was just like, "Oh, well, you haven't played Halo Wars 2, so you don't know anything about the Banish, and if you haven't been filled in at all between what happened between Halo 5 and Infinite, it makes you wait a couple hours before you start getting that info, and only then if you're looking for the data pads and actually like filling yourself in on that stuff." So
but I think that's why you see Atriox body him.
What's that?
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I think that's why you see Atriox body Chief right away, is that you don't need to know who he is, you just need to know he's big bad. I think that was their intention.
I think they do a great job filling in for like casuals like me that didn't read the comics or stuff like that, of like what has happened.
I really
what
don't
has
think,
happened.
I really don't think they do, man. I mentioned that in my review.
Yeah,
I really
I
don't
think
think
they
so.
do either.
I think there's this entire game. It can be approached from a casual standpoint. You know, you can approach the game, you can start it as a casual, but it just resonates 100 times better if you actually know what the fuck is going on. Like, if I tell you, if it's your first time to Halo, and I tell you, bro, the Banished fucking the Banished came to the UNSC Infinity and they just shredded it like it was fucking paper. What are you gonna think about it? You're gonna be like, oh, whatever. Oh,
What's a
but to somebody
UNSC?
who knows- I'm just saying. To somebody who knows the lore, they know that's like the flagship of the UNSC. That's the flagship fucking vessel that they have, and they just destroyed it like it was nothing. I'm just a small example, but the whole game is like that.
Can I ask how many of you got spoiled on the opening cutscene? Did any of you guys know there was an opening cutscene?
The only spoiler I knew was the UNS was the Infinity blowing up. That one I got spoiled. I remember Ains, I told you like a couple weeks before the game came out. I was like,
kind
fuck,
of in
man.
the trailers though, assumed since it's
Yeah,
like
but still, you know, just the fact that I read it, it just annoyed me. I knew it was gonna happen, but
yeah.
So I was
would,
super
I definitely
curious.
agree with Mo. I think everyone I've talked to who's casual, they say like, you know, they had no idea what was going on. It took them like hours of playing and finding data pads, and that's just for the people who went on their way to do it. Like, I think you definitely benefit by being like more hardcore in this game. I personally,
but that's true of all the Halos, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely
that's true of any Millennium, though. Like,
if you watch, all you needed to do was watch a 30-minute YouTube video of the entire Halo saga, right? Like, there's some really good ones out there, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. By the time you finish it and you start the game, dude, you're caught up. You know, especially with all the lingo and the characters, you at least have an idea. You know, like, I mean, if you're new, like, oh, Dr. Catherine Halsey, who the fuck is Dr. Catherine Halsey? Oh,
well, if you don't know that, you haven't been paying attention at all. That's crazy. Yeah.
Rand was making a point. Where were you going?
Well, I was just gonna say, for me, like, I remember watching the E3 2019 trailer, like, I forget what it was called, but they said like that was the opening of the game, right? I'm like, oh, so he starts in space, and I was sitting there like, how did he get in space, right? And like Ty Guy, you know, like Travis, I had the game for preview, so like I've had the game since like November 12th. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna sit down and play. Let's see where we start off in space. And then I start the game up, and it's like, no, here's the Infinity getting ripped. And it's like, all right, this is a cool cutscene. I'm like, oh, Aatrox is here. Oh, and he gets his ass handed to him. Aatrox throws him into a warthog like it's nothing. And they're like, okay, that makes sense.
Ragdoll.
And it's like, and then you know, I'm starting to play, and he was like, "Oh, by the way, Aatrox is dead, and here's your new villain, Escharum." I'm like, "Excuse me? Like, wait, he's dead, and Escharam's the main villain? That's odd." I do agree that the first 4 levels make a very, very strong impression of the game. Although I would say the first level is the weakest, simply because not a lot of combat variety. It's a tutorial level, clearly, but it didn't look good. I don't know about you guys, but I was just like, oh, so we're going into the brown color palette here. And, you know, even the falling boxes didn't look good. Like, I'm looking in the distance, and I can see stuff running in 30 frames, and I'm like, what are we in for here? I don't know. But it got stronger as it went. Second level was amazing, and then the introduction to the open world, but that opening cutscene, those first 4 levels, I was sitting there like, okay, I'm hooked. Like, what happened to Aatrox? There's no way you introduce that character and have him kick the shit out of the hero, and then all of them be like, well, he's dead. Like, I don't believe you. Okay, where's my waifu? Where's Cortana? Like, what? Okay, and I got new Cortana. They got the weapon. I was like, okay, so I was like really hooked by the mystery, like from the get go. Like, why is the ring blown up? What happened to Aatrox? What happened to Cortana? And I thought it was a really incredible start after the first level, like levels 2, 3, and 4. Like, really was like, okay, this is what I wanted from Halo Infinite.
I will push back as well when it comes to like they didn't do a good job onboarding people, because like as the PlayStation guy here, there are people in my community trying Halo out for the first time, and the thing that they are taken aback by the most is not the open world. It's not the action. It's literally the story. They love what is going on between Chief and the weapon. And I think that is the main driver.
I thought you were going to say fruit physics, but
And the fruit physics. It's just phenomenal, out of this world.
All right, so let me interject here because we got some good comments here. So first, let me get to the super chat from Tal. Tal, you're too generous again, man. $20 super chat. Spoilercast, but who's the true Halo master? Don't put that out there in this audience right here. Travis, it's not Travis. I can tell you that.
It's me.
But
1v1 me, bro.
1v1.
Happy holidays.
Oh, who wants to 1v1 me? I will. What?
Tal,
Travis,
thanks so much.
I don't want to
man.
embarrass you. I don't want to
Always.
embarrass you, Travis.
Bro, you play on PlayStation. There's no way you can beat me. You don't even know where the sticks are supposed to go.
See what-
It's just going to be
Tal,
embarrassing
Tal,
for you, I'm telling you.
Tal, this is why I said don't do that in this group right here. Thank you so much, Tal, though. Appreciate it, man.
$10 on Travis.
So Logan says he never read the books and understood it, and they explain it in the game. And one thing that AO said is this is I think very true. Is like Halo is in such a place now, 20 years on, incredible amount of lore where it's impossible to catch everybody up. And that's the weird thing I always think about like games like this, because as you guys were talking about this, and I read AO's comment here, is I was thinking, like, imagine saying to someone, they went to see The Force Awakens, right? And you're like, yeah, but they didn't do a very good job of explaining who Luke was when the movie opened and who Vader was. And it's like, how can you expect them to do that? If this is your first Star Wars movie and you're 20 years late, you're not going to understand everything, period. You're just not.
You kind of don't need to see the original Star Wars trilogy to get Force Awakens, though. And
you don't need to play the other Halos to enjoy this game.
You don't, but
Enjoy
you
is
do
not
to
what we're talking
understand
about,
the
though.
story. To understand the story, you just have to. Like, there's really not a lot to the Force Awakens that like you miss completely if you hadn't seen the old ones. But somebody in this
It's
chat
not just
said-
Force Awakens, but you know what I mean. It's
I know what you're
example
going for.
like that.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
My point is, like, with Halo has been, as a franchise, I think, really bad at managing their expanded universe in a way that where it benefits the main game, because in a way it kind of feels like it's just adding hurdles and barriers of entry that don't need to be there sometimes. But you know, I still love it, and I love how complicated it is, because like it gives Luke and I something to stay up late and nerd out over. But yeah, it's just an unfortunate consequence of a franchise kind of spiraling and growing and doing all the things that franchises do.
Yeah, they were stuck in this weird situation where they had, obviously there was going to be a Halo 6, not Halo Infinite. There was going to be a follow-up to Halo 5. And then they decided they want this onboarding, Halo Infinite, to be a jumping in point for new players, but they had not wrapped up things from Halo 5. So there were like some story beats throughout this where you can tell they just had to get this done to be able to move on to what comes next. And I do see where people are coming from when they say it maybe is confusing. You're not getting all the beats, but I think if you see it all the way through, a lot of the bigger questions and the kind of simpler questions are answered for you. Sure, you can dive down the rabbit hole, learn the lore about the Banished, and you know, give yourself more context. But I think if we're looking at this at like a Hollywood movie level, like you use Star Wars for an example, you could jump in, you could digest what's happening here. And I'm glad that it's simplified, because like Travis was talking about, Halo's lore has gotten so convoluted that the average person doesn't even want to take the time to understand what's happening. Like, there's so much work you have to do to understand what's happening in the Halo expanded universe. So I'm glad that this was just basic. A lot of the fundamentals here. You have a big bad guy, you have Chief, you have the weapon, you have the pilot, and you have this story, this tight 8-ish hour of actual story bits in here. And I thought they did a great job making it digestible for someone who doesn't know what the hell is happening.
How do you onboard someone? How do you onboard someone to the MCU? It's like the same thing. There's just so much content there that some people are like, whoa. And most of the time, people are just going to jump into, you know, whatever movie. It doesn't really matter about what happens.
There's an element we need to acknowledge, though, in that this is the first of what is likely to be several campaigns that vary in size. And they, as one of the guys who get really into the lore, they left a lot of unanswered questions, and some of them are big, like where are the Prometheans, right? Like little stuff like that.
Don't answer that question. Just leave them.
Please answer it.
A point well made and well taken. But what they've done is they onboarded people into a story that is digestible enough in a 10-hour span on normal, or so, and they've left a lot of places they can go, stories they can tell, ranging from Blue Team and Locke and Palmer and Lasky to the Prometheans and where the flood is and the Endless. They've given themselves so many avenues to tell stories that if we look at it out in that context, this one campaign seems to have accomplished a lot of the main beats that they needed to do in order to bring a new generation of Halo fans in. That's not to say I don't want so much more from the lore. I'm just excited to see that more people are into it, you know?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, but that comment is funny, right? Reminded me of the opening of Combat Evolve. You just dropped in the middle of war and start shooting purple aliens. There's no context at all.
Well, that's what I was going to say too. Yeah, I mean that's a perfect comment because everybody here remember the first time they played CE. Like, did you? I remember going through that. I didn't know what the hell was going on with the spark, but part of that was the fun of it too. And I could actually see this. So I would agree with Travis about 4 and 5. Like, I think there was way too much expanded stuff. You had to go read comic books to figure out what happened with this guy, and it got really messy. And I think they did a poor job managing the expanded universe, making the gamer have to go beyond the games to get that story. But I think this was I put this more in the category of CE, where if I was coming on as, I was trying to picture that too, coming on as a new person and comparing that to CE, where I remember finishing that and being like, and started asking questions, and that was kind of part of the fun, like trying to unravel that. And I remember all the theories people were coming up with before Halo 2, like what was this all about? Well, who are these people? And I think they did a good enough job, like what Miles said. Like, I think with the high level, if you kind of broke this down as like an outline, like the big plot points you could understand, right? Like they made those very, very simple. We need to go do this, and go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, like, it's not really this whole expansion that you're talking about. It really did start with Bungie, right? Like, I mean, you really gotta first they did. Not in a bad way. I'm not saying this in a bad way. Like, I mean, if you play Halo Reach, if Halo Reach is your first Halo game, is that going to resonate the same way with you as if you played the previous games before? How Cortana got to the Pillar of Autumn, how she got in his hands, what was sacrificed in order to get her there, or like, why did they even do the ODST game? For what? Right? Like, that was lore expansion itself. They didn't need to. We knew the ODSTs existed. We didn't have to be in their shoes, but still, that was expansion. And look when they did it. They did it while High Charity was about to slip space out of New Mombasa. You know, I mean, that was it was already set from before. They didn't do that good of a job. I don't know, man. I love it. Like, I can't shit talk it so much because I get what you're saying in terms of, it getting too convoluted, but I really give them props for being able to just expand it so much where it had to go into other forms of media, man. I mean, that's amazing. And that's why Halo lore nerds are what they are, because they eat all that shit up, whether you read it or listen to it or whatever it is. Like, it's really cool. Amazing. It's really freaking it's amazing to me.
It's a strength and a weakness of it. I mean,
audiobooks exist.
The strengths and the weaknesses do mirror each other here, right? So, like, when we say that is the opportunity with it, there is a lot of benefits to that too. And I think for me, when I ended this, I actually became more interested in the expanded lore, which I haven't been much of a reader the last, I don't know, since I had kids. But it made me a lot more interested. I actually grabbed some audiobooks and then started listening to that stuff. So I think they did a good enough job. I think just keeping things compact enough here, also planting a lot of seeds. I think if you were invested in the expanded lore, you got more out of it. But also they created a lot of curiosity. So, I mean, there's no reason somebody can't go back now and try to figure out what was that all about. Yeah.
I think the characters, the way they, some of you have said it, right? They presented this as a concise story in its own. With a focus on 4 core characters, if you count Escharum, right? With Chief, the pilot, obviously being kind of a deniment, but it's really Chief, the weapon, and Escharum. And I love the way that they also present. Someone else said this as well. Too many people to keep track of. But the way that they presented the story from Escherum's perspective, where you realize from his perspective, he's kind of the chief of their group, right? Of the Banished in the sense, and that he's just trying to lead them and do the right thing and be a warrior and be the strong person. He's facing his own struggles. And I really liked how they set that up, because Escharum at his core was the focus for this story. And as we'll obviously get to right later, but Atriox is this overarching kind of villain that lives on and will obviously be in the future. And I just think they did a really good job. I think given the circumstances we've discussed, 20 years, a ridiculous amount of lore, content, characters, given those circumstances, I felt they did a really good job of making this campaign a campaign that people like us could really enjoy, while simultaneously being a game and campaign that someone new to Halo could enjoy.
I think there's like too much almost of an emphasis being put on this like onboarding process. Like I don't know if any of you guys play Warframe at all. It's not necessarily required for what I'm about to say, but I watched a documentary on that game where the creative director at the studio that makes Warframe said something along the lines of, in all the time he spent game developing, all the research he's done, all the effort that a lot of games put into this onboarding process is usually like, it doesn't end up paying off when you take into consideration the effort that gets taken away from appeasing the already like current fans. And if you play Warframe at all, it is very, very unfriendly for new players. They do almost nothing to onboard new players. They put almost all of their effort into just like taking care of the fan base that's been with them the whole time. And that game grows every day. It gets new players every day. People start new accounts every day. And it's this huge successful thing. And they put almost no time into this onboarding process. Like Mother brought up before, when we all played Combat Evolved, we didn't need to be onboarded. We just got dropped on a planet, shot purple aliens. I think anybody that is a longtime Halo fan, like Mo was talking about, is going to get a lot of benefit from that previous knowledge, and it's going to really pay off. But it's not really going to take away from people like Badbit said, who are playing for the first time. He said their favorite thing is the story. So I would rather them put almost nothing into onboarding people into the universe. If they want, they can make those YouTube videos and they can watch them and stuff like that. I would want them to make us happy. Like, we're the ones that have been playing the game for 20 years. We're the ones that are going to get the most out of anything that they do. So they should be putting that effort into that. I think that if the game's fun and the game's good, people will play it. It doesn't matter if there's 5 games before it, just like the MCU, people are going to go see the new Spider-Man even if they didn't see Eternals or Venom or anything else. So like,
we don't need to talk about that.
And let me, it's a good time for a super chat from Dan Lazaro real quick.
Great point,
he said, I never played Halo before and I followed the story fine. Yeah. So Dan, thank you for the super chat, man. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
That is something like what Game Positive just said. I think, Eric, you hit it out of the park. It's the onboarding, as long as the game is fun, and it's very fun, does not really matter much.
Yeah, we're going to tweet about it. We're going to talk about it. People are going to see them. People are going to see the Metacritic scores. The YouTube algorithm's going to push them to trailers. They're going to see it on TV. Like, if they're going to play it, it's free on Game Pass. So, like, they're not going to need their handheld. They're not going to need a red carpet to direct them to how to understand what's happening. They're just going to drop on the planet and start shooting red aliens.
You know, a nice barometer of this is if you look at a lot of the Halo content creators, the Halo specific content creators that have done various recaps, their views are off the charts. And that says that people are interested in finding this out. And while 100%. I do lament the fact that they didn't have a recap the way the Gears of War did, which I think that would have been well served. The point is made by Eric as well, is like, that would that effort really be rewarded? And clearly these Halo content creators have it covered, because the interest in the brand is just huge. And so that is incredible. And I feel like we've gotten so far down this road, we're forgetting the fact that after these corridor levels on that banished ship, and after you destroy it, you land on an open world Zeta Halo ring that you can explore. And that to me was truly the evolution of Halo. And that's what I would love to hear.
I like you trying to segue us, Luke. I appreciate it greatly. I know, man. Thank you, brother. Thank you. I will just say real quick, AO said it too, and I was going to bring this up as well, Travis, and we're not talking about Destiny, so I'll say that before you get going, but Destiny faces a very similar problem, right? It's like, there's so much going on in that universe.
It's like, way worse than Destiny. We don't even need to bring it up.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, like, but the point being, games that get this big, get this lore, get this audience.
I will say, I think the brilliant thing that Halo Infinite does is they have the weapon there who is basically the player
Mhm.
if you've
Yes.
never played a Halo game
Yes.
before. He knows
Yeah.
nothing, and so you get to kind of learn everything through her lens, and I think that's just like brilliant. So
Yeah,
her
she
asking
learns.
questions. What is that? Oh, that's a
Yeah.
banshee.
but it takes a while to
Yeah,
get
yeah,
there. My point is, since we're talking about the first few hours are just straight confusion if you've never played another
Yeah,
Halo
yeah,
game,
yeah.
but you get there eventually.
Jordan, I haven't heard your voice tonight, bro. What did you think of the opening?
No, it was good. It was good. That's all I'm going to say about that. We can move on.
It was good. Moving on. It was a hard 7. Hard 7.
Yeah.
Oh man! Shout out to Noof in the chat, Cotton in the chat. Cotton, probably no joke, one of the best Halo competitive players I know. Man is real. Shout out to you guys in the chat. Thanks for coming and joining us tonight. So
1v1 Travis. That's right.
Travis doesn't want that heat. Trust me.
I do.
No, you don't.
Do it.
No, you don't.
Let's do it.
The only way you want that heat is if you stream it, so I can record it and save it for the future.
I don't understand what you think you're.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Moving on. So Luke tried to segue us there, and I appreciate it. So we're going to move into the open world aspects, and I know this is where this could be an interesting conversation. So for the first time, Halo, we don't have to recover it, right? Is open world, and it's in my opinion, I will say that what I wrote in my review is I think it's obviously an open world. There's multiple objectives you can explore. There's tons of Easter eggs. But I thought they did a pretty good job of keeping it more concise than some open worlds, especially as the, we love to talk about Ubisoft games. They kind of get the most flack for their open world design, for right or wrong. But I think that 343 did a pretty good job of making it pretty concise in the fact of really the core things are, one, the story continuation is always there and present, and you don't have to meet any arbitrary requirements to do the next story mission. So if you just want to run through the story, just like any other Halo campaign, you can do that. I think that's fantastic. Mm-hmm. The other aspect is, the strongholds really kind of relate to the Banished. And as you take over more of them, it plays into the story and you actually see some cutscenes relating to Escharum kind of losing his shit over, losing his grip on the Zeta Halo ring, which I think is really neat. And then obviously there's some minor activities and stuff, but most of the minor activities are really just to highlight the beauty of the Halo sandbox, right? The vehicles, the play, the movement, the weaponry, things of that nature. And I think that's what it does really well, is it kind of, in my opinion, it gives that promise. It gives the player that promise of what Halo CE opened with on the second level of Halo. It gives you that in 2021 with current technology to go and finally explore a Halo ring. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't inundate the player with, you have to do 58 bullshit things, and then maybe we'll talk to you more about the weapon. Like, you know what I mean? It's like the ongoing story, the ongoing elements, the ongoing mystery is always present. It doesn't feel like you're just wasting your time, at least in my opinion.
Also,
so
we don't send Master Chief on fetch quests.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
It doesn't have any quests that aren't just things that Master Chief would do anyway, like go and blow something up and kill some people, hunt down a bad guy.
That's what I mean. It's like pointing
Yeah.
into what Chief is doing, right, on Zeta Halo. Right.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so good.
So before I spend 30 minutes comparing Halo Infinite to
Don't do it.
Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
God damn it.
Yeah, there it is. There it is.
Ains, I love your
Based
point.
Miles.
I loved your point about this feels like Halo Combat Evolved as we experience it for the first time. This feels like that dream, that vision kind of come to life. It feels like when I played the Resident Evil 2 remake for the first time, and Resident Evil 2's remake felt like what I imagined Resident Evil 2 felt like when I first played it on PS1 back in the day. It does an amazing job giving you this open world that is worthwhile to explore, but it doesn't have the syndrome a lot of open world games have, like you touched on, where it's marker after marker after marker, and it's just, you're inundated with all of these side quests, with all of these kind of meaningless objectives. You're organically pulled into a lot of these. You see a fort in the distance, its walls go up, they get on the megaphone and start yelling at you. You're drawn to that. It's so, instead of me, going down a checklist, doing things arbitrarily, I was compelled because of the reasons it ties into the story, because of the reasons, I'm being antagonized by these groups. And I thought that was, one of the best open world experiences I've played in a long time, because it was one of the first times in a long time where I wanted to explore the open world where I didn't even like. I love vehicles in Halo. I spent 99% of the time just using that grapple shot, just hooking around that map and just exploring every nook and cranny. And that's rare. That is a rare feat for me in an open world game.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I spend most of the time. Honestly, it's more like I felt it was more like Spider-Man 2018 because all I was doing was literally pretending I was like Spider-Man because I was literally like hook shotting every tree I can just to see what I can do in terms of like how long will it take until I touch the ground type of game that I played, that was super fun to me, and I love how this game played with its own physics pretty well. Now I'm gonna have the unpopular opinion here, and I'm ready to get yelled at. I like this open world a lot, and for all the reasons Miles says.
Let's hear PlayStation.
Get your finger ready, Ains.
Get the finger ready. I think this is a really great open world, and my critiques are really, really small. It was just, to me, the area is just one area. I'd like a couple more. I know the hot button issue right now is biomes. I like a little bit more variety.
No, I think diversity was missing. I even put that in my review, Joe, is that diversity was missing.
Yeah, and even the diversity of what you're doing as well. So like, you know, it felt like what I was ending up doing was clearing just big bases and low bases. Big bases, low bases. That's what I would like to see a little bit, and I don't have a clear answer to, of there has to be something else that my brain is doing, neurons firing, that doesn't feel like I'm just taking over bases. And that's literally all I got.
I think they tried that when they like rescuing. I'm assuming the little bases are like the rescuing
the
platoons.
FOBs.
Oh, okay, so
saving the little guys, yeah.
Okay, so saving the little teams was one thing. Then you had propaganda towers. You had the big bases, finding FOBs. I don't know what else there would have been.
There's the ransom ones.
Oh, the high value targets. Yep.
Yeah, really the core is the bases, strongholds, high value targets, right? And then you had the distress calls, which were simple little things. Yeah. And then you had the propaganda towers, which I think were put in more as kind of a fun thing, as a goofy thing, because of the grunts and nonsense, right?
Yeah. Because all I was doing was clearing a little base full of people and then destroying a tower.
To address the diversity aspect, I think when you look at the troubled development that it went through and some of the comments that 343 themselves have made, and you know that there is, I want to say it was like 2/3 of the game was cut or changed in the final year or two.
Yeah,
you can literally see doors and areas where it looks like there was supposed to be something, and there's nothing there at this point in the game. And I think that is the promise of Halo Infinite. Because I think Joe makes a logical, fair criticism. It is just one environment. Well, two environments. I think some of the destroyed areas in the cave systems. But I agree with that criticism. I wasn't bothered enough that it knocked against the game for me, though.
Oh,
but
no.
It did get me. No, you said it was terrible, and you said you hated it.
I'm sorry, obviously, this is a 5, and and that's the thing. Like, the open world is fantastic. And it's what it's offering me is, I think, the promise of more. If this is the base level, the promise of more of that 10-year plan, they're going to build upon it. That has me excited. So I will say that again, small criticism, guy.
I just wanted to say, Joe, that Spider-Man takes place entirely in New York City, so that's one biome.
That's a good point.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Say that.
And
they do have a pride flag on one of the walls, so
they used that biome for the second game. So
yes,
there's snow. There's snow.
No,
we also.
I agree with that bit though, because the diversity was very jarring when you play through the whole game. You're like, oh man, it was in the Pacific Northwest the entire time, and then the indoor levels were like
Canada,
the same levels as well. It was like, okay, at least they made it work story wise, because all the levels basically take place really close to one another, right? You weren't like going to the opposite side of the ring, and on the opposite side of the ring, it's the Pacific Northwest again. What do you know, right? Like so playing through it, I was just like, everything looks the same. But after a while, I was just like, whatever. It's like, I'm having so much fun clearing everything. Because it's what the gameplay really elevates this game above anything. Like, I have issues with the story and how it's presented.
We're getting there.
And I want to talk about it. But what makes this, to me, this is the best playing Halo game ever made.
Absolutely.
Better than any of the Bungie games.
Very much so.
and I just like they exceeded all my expectations for it. And the open world, like I was concerned about the open world because I was just like, I feel that Far Cry fatigue, man. Far Cry was one of my favorite franchises, and I just can't play 6 for long. I just was like, I've done this I don't know how many times where I just like walk through the map and do all the, like I couldn't even play Valhalla. I played Odyssey for 100 hours and I get Valhalla. I'm like, I can't do this.
You're playing too many Ubisoft games, Rand.
Yeah,
you gotta drop
them. But I loved Red Dead 2, and I think I played that for I don't know how long. But then I tried playing. I tried playing Horizon Zero Dawn, and I couldn't play it for more than 2 hours. I was bored out of my mind because of the open world. I don't know. There's this, but with this, I never got the fatigue of going through an open world like I have been in some other games, and I just like hope for the eventual expansion sequels is that we do see. Okay, where's desert? Where's the snow? How about some different looking interiors, Forerunner structures?
Well,
like
at the end, though, Rand, when they spit you out, they spit you out after that 3-day area, you're in the desert.
That's on the other side of the ring,
by the
way.
Right.
Other side of the ring, so that's cool. Yeah.
Well, we know that stuff's coming. You know, Rand, you make some really good points, and you know, I'm actually somebody who I can't really think of any real open world games this generation that have captivated me. I have Ubisoft Burnout, usually like 10 hours. I'll like the game for like 10 hours, and then it's for something clicks, like just tips over at some point after that I get burned out of it. And it happens in all the open world games where I just start beelining through it. But, you know, I even think back to like all the other Halos. Halo CE, I've always said was like my favorite game of all time. And, you know, every single Halo has had like some major criticisms. Like I could go through every one of them and at the time think about the things that I thought that I was very critical of. And even in CE, like it did have different biomes, but then within those few biomes, they cut and pasted things a lot, right? But the reason why that game is so replayable, why I can go back to that and play that and do a legendary run like any given year, and it still just hooks me as soon as I start it, is because of that sandbox. And that's the one thing that 343, I thought, and I know, Ains, you're going to disagree with me. That's the reason I didn't like Halo 4's campaign or 5's. You know, I mean, when I say didn't like, I didn't love them. You know, they weren't like bad to me, but they weren't.
I was gonna say, like, correct yourself at least a little bit there.
Yeah. They weren't like when I replayed everything. I did my run through them all. I still liked 1 and 3. I thought still played, and even 2 played better than 4 did, even though that's a little bit more modern. And that was the thing coming into the last few years running up to this game. That's the number one thing I thought they had to hit, because that's the foundation of Halo that I thought they didn't get before. And to me, they hit a 10 out of 10 in that one area. And that's what really brings up the score. Now, I agree they can do some different things for diversity, maybe even have some linear, you know, set piece levels they mix in, you know, that are a little bit different next time, or, you know, have some, you know, scarabs or something like that next time. But even within the different environments, I do think some of them, I think we sell short some of the personality. Like if you go to that level with the 3 gun towers where you have all the broken down ships around you, to me, that had a completely different tone than the first level when you walk out of that ship. So I think, you know, it wasn't perfect. There was parts where it did feel, you know, you were looking at some of the stuff a little bit too long, but there was some areas that made you go, okay, they really did change the tone here and there. And I think some of that gets lost in that too, as well.
Yeah.
I will also like to shout out. I will like to shout out that where I think this game really, and maybe it is like the old fan in me that loves so much, is where I think a home run on is the linear levels, like the story levels themselves are just masterpieces. Like they're so well fucking made.
Can you please highlight Yosemite Blam's?
I'm trying to get there. I literally have. Well, it depends. He's asked a bunch of good comments.
Joe. Go ahead. Yeah, because I wanted to touch on the whole thing you guys were talking about.
Are you talking about this one?
No, not that one. The one where he's talking about the variety, the locales. Yeah, about the silent auditorium or the spires. Because I was listening to you guys about the. Okay, so I agree about the one biome thing. Sure. Okay, my whole approach to this is we have a Halo game that's taking place in a semi-open world, right? Granted, it's broken up into 3 islands or whatever it is. How are they going to pull this off? I'm a if you don't know me, I'm a proud Ubisoft hater. I hate the Ubisoft open world formula. I'll tattoo that shit on my fucking forehead. I hate their formula. I hate everything that they do. I feel like they've ruined open world games. If you enjoy them, good for you. I'm happy for you. But for someone like me, like they've made me hate open world games because of the way that they've done it. And then comes this game, and that's the one thing we were all concerned about. Well, at least I was. I was like, shit, because open world games, the fatigue hits me right away with them. But this is Halo. And I'm a Halo junkie. So I'm like, okay, like maybe my bias will let me carry myself forward even more with it. But I never felt like that because it was so fucking fun to play. Like, yeah, the biomes were missing. You didn't get the winter, you didn't get the snow or whatever it is. But at the same time, we were doing so much and exploring so much. And while I was reviewing this game, I'm like, holy shit, man, they actually pulled this off. They managed to pull this off in one environment and keeping it so fun that it became like a side. I didn't even think about the fact that I was playing in one single biome the whole time. And the reason why I wanted to highlight Yosemite's message here is because he's talking about, do you guys remember the architecture in the Silent Auditorium or the Spire? It was unbelievable how beautiful it was. The little details and whatnot. They did such a great... They did such a great job with the indoor environments as well to really differentiate them from the outdoor environments that you were in. I feel like they need to be commended for that, man. Like I get that. I do get that, and I'm hoping at least in the future that they do. But for what they did and for the first time in a Halo game, I don't know, man. You can call me a Halo slappy which is what I am. I don't give a shit, but I think they really pulled it off.
Well, time of day too. You didn't mention that. And don't you think that makes a big difference too? Like I don't know if you guys
night-day cycle.
Yeah, like I remember climbing up to the top of the mountain in the night, and then all of a sudden they start putting on that music, and it just almost had this truth and reconciliation.
You know what would have been awesome? Dynamic weather. Dynamic weather.
Well, they've talked about wanting to add that to the end.
Yes, that would have been amazing. In there.
But we solved it. This game does have multiple biomes. Everybody get to Twitter. All right, let's get there. Let's let everyone know. All right, it's our mission.
So I think I think this is an interesting point that Yosemite makes here too. Is why I highlighted this one is because we've talked about this being the foundation for what's to come, right? So as we're all discussing here, and you start to think about different possible environments, and even in the Halo Infinite art book, you see a snow level and you see a desert level, and there's things that they obviously have already sketched out. So what he's asking here, I think we definitely see, in my opinion, right, which is where Infinite will just be built upon, where I don't think as they add to the campaign, it's going to be like the areas in Infinite now will be inaccessible, right? I think they'll just continue to kind of grow that world over time. With different campaign portions that you can play through with different diversity, weather systems, etc. Because it's clear they want to do those things, and as with all game development. So, in my opinion, just to answer Yosemite's question here, I think it does connect, and this just grows as a world. It doesn't become individualistic like we saw with prior Halo games.
Yeah, I think how I've been looking at it now that I've had some time to kind of wrap my mind around, we know stuff was cut, like we talked about. There's slices of the map where it looks like they literally took scissors and just like cut off the side of areas, and it's whatever. But I feel like this feels like one just kick-ass long level of Halo.
Yes.
I'm wondering if that's going to be the approach to the campaign. Is this is our Pacific Northwest level, our biome, one concluding story, or one story with a defined beginning, middle, and end, and then the next one we're going to go to the desert, and it's going to be the same kind of vibe where it has its own campaign. It's still interconnected in this world. You can still go between the areas of the world, but I wonder if that's how they're going to separate the fact that it is very segmented. The game is going to be very segmented in a way that maybe they weren't planning originally. And I'm curious to see how that grows, how that evolves, and how the overarching narrative ties into this kind of ongoing game.
Yeah. I feel like they probably, at first I was thinking we probably will do separate locations for each campaign and move around a little bit. And I still think we'll probably do that for main missions. But the reason I'm convinced that they're going to expand on the existing Halo ring is because they mentioned so many times in the campaign the fact that the Halo ring heals itself and like rebuilds parts. And it's like, oh, so obviously every time we get a new area, it's going to be like, oh, it rebuilt this new part of the ring, and now you got to go and watch.
It's a core part of the story, right? I mean,
like you'd be stupid not to use that to just like expand your map. It's like the perfect reason to do it, right?
Yeah.
The perfect excuse. So.
Yeah. Let me get new super chat real quick. $5 Canadian. Halo Infinite gave us plenty to do without ever overcomplicating things. Great combat variety and a final boss, so you couldn't wait to beat down. No doubt.
The other thing I'll say,
I completely agree. Thank you, New.
Thank you. Mo was talking about how he didn't get exhausted by the open world. Halo Infinite does not overstay its welcome as a campaign.
Yes.
It is a pretty lean campaign. You're not playing for 40 hours or 100 hours like a Skyrim or Witcher 3. I was able to beat it and get all of the map completed, granted on heroic, which I felt icky playing on that difficulty.
Stop saying that, because I did it on heroic and it was tough. And Travis, you talk down about heroic every time.
The guy next to you,
I mean,
it's
legendary. It's not real Halo for me. I think legendary is perfectly balanced. It feels like a fair challenge. Which I won't say about all the Halo campaigns, but Halo Infinite Legendary is really good. But I was able to do it on the day of release.
Wait till you play it on normal. That's real fun there.
No way. I don't even believe that normal is a real difficulty.
Normal gang.
Wait till you play it on easy.
Normal gang. But yeah,
I played on normal. Did you even play Halo, or did?
You guys are gatekeeping right now.
The fact that you really beat it in like two or three sittings is a huge advantage that this game has, because I could see myself. I beat it in such a short period of time. I didn't even notice that there were no biome diversity until afterward when people were talking about it on Twitter. But I feel like that is an advantage that this game has, is you can beat it in a couple sittings and it goes down so easy. It's great.
It's
That's
such
exactly
a
Cotton's
flex to have a game that leaves you wanting more. Like in this day and age, there are so many games where I just want to be done. My God, I just want to be done with this game so I can move on with my life. I wrapped up Halo Infinite. I was like, oh man, I want to give me some more of that. So
I've already played it twice, all the way through. I
when you play a Dark Souls game, you're like, man, could this piece of shit be over with?
Whoa!
I'm on playthrough 15 of Dark Souls 3.
I'm kidding, by the way. That was just for Miles because I know he loves Dark Souls. I'm kidding.
Oh, and me and Joe.
Don't round me up, Brandon.
And Travis. And
not on the Halo Spoilercast, okay?
By the way, Cotton is flexing on all of you right now.
I'm looking forward to my lasso run. If I hadn't been reviews, I would have already done it, man.
7 hours and 30 minutes. Fuck, that's like my intro time.
Make sure you grab that tank gun that you
tank gun,
yeah.
Blow everything away.
There's actually an achievement for beating it in less than
8 hours.
8 hours.
8
hours.
Which again, I think is a great call to the design, right? I've spent 30 hours on one playthrough just exploring, right? Easter eggs, nonsense, etc., audio logs. But to his point, if you want to just do the main story missions, it feels like a classic Halo game, kind of almost even without the open world, because you can just play the missions through directly, and I think that's fantastic.
Can I bring up some nitpicks I have really quickly about the linear levels, to see if anybody else had the same nitpicks as me. I love the game, but I don't know about you guys, but every time I had to go pick up a power seed to power up a door, I do that so many. Seriously, by the end, I started rolling my eyes.
Fair enough. Yeah.
When they do it a couple times, okay, but that's not even. How many times did you have to insert Cortana into a panel? And
have the same exact animation of her coming out, and you put
I'm just saying, man, how long ago was this Halo ring made? And there's a perfect console for you to insert an AI into.
This guy has not played Halo 4, because in that one you have to pull it out of your head.
I understand, but did anybody feel the same? I was just, and I love the weapon, and I know that's the only time you really get to see her. When she does her stuff, so I get why they had to do it, but you did it so much during the game.
I had the thing with the power seed. I'm like, are they really trying to stop him or just inconvenience him slightly?
I'd put this 20 feet away.
I'm with you
well, technically
about power seeds, but they got to teach people to play stockpile somehow.
Yes.
How will they learn?
Hey, by the way, one quick funny thing about the seeds in the game. I grabbed the seed. The first time you interact with the seed, I grabbed it and I chucked it, right? And Chief fucking throws it far, like a lot further than the Spartans in the multiplayer. So I remember I texted Ains, we were reviewing it. I texted him, like, bro, the Spartans in the multiplayer are a bunch of bitches. They can only throw it like half the distance he can.
You can grapple with it too. I didn't know that until partway through the game, but that makes
you can
it a lot easier.
Maybe it's the slow ass walking animation where you grab and you're like, oh yeah, okay, it'll take minutes to get back to where I was.
Just use the grapple, man. You get through those sections a lot faster.
That's right.
If you grapple.
Right, So, Rand, to your point, as far as the pedestals and Cortana, like that was obviously like the point at which the game would trigger a cutscene. Right?
Yeah.
So that's how they did the majority of their storytelling. So loading screen, yes. So I guess to that point, like, what did you guys think of the fact that the majority of the story was told with holograms?
Oh, okay. So let me set that up. Let me set that up because I know Rand is chomping at the bit right now.
Yeah.
So
Camping.
So yeah, let's get into the actual core parts of the story as they relate to Escharum and Cortana, and closing out the loop of the prior threads of Halo games, which includes Cortana, of course.
They did
right?
not close all the loops.
So, all right, calm down. So yes, so we'll start with Cortana because I'm interested to hear here. So Cortana, obviously a critical, character all throughout the Halo universe up until this point. And we know where 5 ended if you've just played the mainline games. We know where this game is in the timeline and what's happened in between then and now. But obviously what 343 chose to do, which Rand and I discussed in a party chat one night for a while, was it felt like with Infinite, they were backed into a corner, right? And they needed to kind of do some correction from 5 and get themselves out of a hole. Now, I think where the argument comes into, Travis disagrees, that's fine. That's a shocked. But I think, the argument will be whether they did that well or not. So let's stay on Cortana because it is a critical part to the game. It's a critical part to Halo. I know where Rand sits on this. I know where a couple people sit on this. My personal belief, as I played it again, because I just finished the game a second time, and I will tell you guys, I like the game even better the second time.
Get a job, Ains.
And I think you pick up on more story elements the second time. Believe me, because I kept DMing Mo, and I was like, "How the fuck did we miss this?"
Shutter Island, bro.
And they literally like say it, like it's in the narrative, and you're like, "How did I miss this the first time?" But I personally think they did a really good job, especially reflecting on it the second job. I know Cortana wasn't in the story. I know it wasn't a main character thing in this one, but I thought they did a really good job of layering her into this story. And by the time you get to the culmination of her and Atriox and what actually happened, she shows up quite a lot. And I think, in my opinion, they did that pretty well. So having said that, I'm going to go to Rand first because I know where he stands on this, because I want to hear your guys' thoughts on what he has to say.
All right, so I feel very strongly about this, and I've talked profusely to Ains and Miles about this, so they know where I stand on it. Okay, I'll set it up in the saying that the Cortana stuff actually gave me goosebumps, and the final scene with her saying goodbye to Chief legit choked me up. All right?
Agree.
However, I thought the storytelling in that part was god-awful. Okay? To the point where I felt robbed as a fan. And let me explain it by this. Like, the idea that Cortana, the second most important character in the entire series, I think everybody would agree to, is literally killed off screen in an audio log is a fucking travesty. Like, of storytelling. Like, you mean to tell me you couldn't build a game where you're with Cortana again and she does the same sort of thing, but you're there and you see it? Because I felt robbed not only as the experience of seeing Chief's reaction to her death, but then my reaction to her death as it happened. I felt it was piss poor storytelling. I felt the fact that they sort of did this in a visual audio log hologram screamed to me almost of, we ran out of time and we can't make cutscenes, and like we can explain it away as just data noise. When I got to that part where Cortana was dead, and they try to do this thing where they explain like, oh, well, she destroyed the Spartan 4 base, and then she blew up the thing. I'm like, oh man, they're like, okay, so they're setting her up and then there's like, she redeems herself, and I'm like, they literally gave her a redemption arc in 4 minutes. I was like, what is going? And at that point, when I finished the game, I thought to myself, I missed a game in between Halo 5 and Halo Infinite. There should have been another game in between there. This whole game felt like, when I finished it, a complete setup for the next expansion, right?
Yep.
And I know what people are going to say, and I understand people's perspectives, but the fact that they took the villain of Halo 5 that they set up, right, and the Guardians and all this galactic, whatever you want to call it, domination, and they threw it all away and swept it under the rug, and it was like, whatever, here's Atrax, but not really, it's Escharum, and Cortana's here, but she's dead, but it doesn't really matter because here's Cortana too. I was just like, I sat there and I'm like, this is an awful way to tell this story, and I don't know what to expect going on, because if you told me in 2016 while we were waiting for the next game that they would kill Cortana off screen and nothing from Halo 5 would have mattered, I would have been like, you're ridiculous. That is horrible. So I'm going to sit here and tell you guys, are you really confident enough that in the next Halo expansion, 6 months haven't passed already, and the pilots already killed Atrax and Master Chief's already beaten the Endless? Because that's exactly what would happen.
All right, you're jumping a bit. You're jumping a bit. Okay.
I kind of agree with Rand on a lot of points. In that
Same.
I thought the story was sort of awkwardly told, but the reason for that isn't because of like them running out of time or not being able to tell a story. It's because they made a decision to listen to fan feedback and backpedal on the story they told in 5, which I think it was a mistake. You should never listen to your fans. They're stupid. They aren't good storytellers. They don't know what they're talking about. And I think that their attempts to do it, they said, well, this has got to be a reboot. We don't want to completely ignore the stuff that we did in 5, but we have to sort of explain it away and put a bow on it so that we can enter this new era of Halo. And I think they did that part incredibly well. Like, they set up so many great stories that I know we're going to get in the future, and they've sort of freed themselves from the stuff that they wrote in the back. In the past. But the way that they did it and all the stuff that they wrote out, even, I know what Luke's going to say, they did some of it with the lore, I know, but I still think that like anytime a franchise does this, it ends up being a disaster. And I say that as a guy who's a Star Wars fan. Like, if you've seen Rise of Skywalker, like that's an ultimate example of like them listening to the fans and it just ruining stuff. Like, they should have just stuck to their guns. I think that as soon as they made that decision, this game was always going to have those problems. And that's just the culture we live in now, where you can get fan feedback and thousands of uninformed people's opinions all at once. It's just the way it works.
I don't mean to keep cutting you or accidentally cutting you off. I
talk too much.
No, you don't. I just got excited. I do. There was a lot of mess left over after 4 and 5 between the beginning of the Reclaimer saga or trilogy it was supposed to be, and then 5, and then leaving 5 the way you did with the Created. I was really disappointed with the way they addressed the Created. They destroyed an entire planet at one point when they destroyed Dosiak, and they destroyed Sydney, and they did all these things, but then there was no like how did they fall? Like, what? There's literally a crashed Guardian in the background. The Banished were the perfect enemy to take down the Created, because they don't use smart AIs, and that's a lore thing. But in none of the books and outside of the lore have we really addressed much of that. There've been little like teases, but nothing really. And I had to, as the lore guy, I had to actually go and watch like Hidden Xperia and Halo Canon and all these people's things to try and understand the relationship between Cortana and Atriox and what actually happened there. That to me was very messy and confusing to figure out how her redemption worked, like what actually happened to the Created, because she interacted with Forerunner tech in 4 and then in between 4 and 5 that's supposed to calm her rampancy a little bit, and when she went to the domain, like there's all these weird things that don't make sense, and I feel like the storytelling in the game for people who don't care about that stuff it still made no sense. The created
Yeah.
were not addressed and whatnot, and that was my concern with that. What was interesting is that for all that Rand is saying that I agree with, and I think we all kind of agree with, it didn't bother me as much because the game was still so fun that I think I allowed myself to forgive that.
That's exactly where I'm at too.
Well, Miles told me, "Fuck Cortana. She's a bitch anyway."
I'll give you Halo 5 Cortana, but not Halo 4.
She's dead. All right.
Yeah,
Let's
nobody
move
talks
on
bad
with
about
our
Halo
lives.
4 Cortana.
No.
Cortana's dead. I'm so glad they did it because you know what they were doing, Rand, and you know why they killed her off screen? Because they wanted you to believe she was still kicking. They wanted you to have that glimmer of hope that she was going to come back yet again, and she wasn't actually dead. Rand. She was there, and that is why they killed her quote unquote off screen.
But bro, they could have written a story where Master Chief and Cortana team up one more time.
Why? Why would they do that?
That would have been so.
I'm just saying they could have.
The end of Halo 4, when she sacrifices herself and they have that final goodbye.
Yeah, she should never came back.
That is the last time Halo or Chief and Cortana had their like final moment. It wasn't in 5 when she cured her rampancy. That was the last time they both had their pure selves to each other, and then she faded into the background. I'm serious, man. No,
They were
because
naked,
He's right.
Well, yeah,
He's
I mean,
right.
technically they
That
were. It was-
sounded really.
Come on, bro. Halo 4 was all virtual sex. Let's not lie to each other. You know what I mean? But that was the last wholesome moment between them that they shared, right? That was the last time she cared. And then in Halo 5, he looked at her in a different way because she was different. You know, she still felt for him, and that's why she wanted to fucking lock him up in stasis for 10,000 years or whatever it was, because she didn't want to kill him, right? But that was the last time. So that's why for me in this game, I get what you're saying, Rand, and I do agree with it, you know, from that standpoint. But because this game had to be told all these things, what we were playing was the future already. And all these things had to be told in the way that they were because they had to. I don't know how else they could have told the story and how they could have presented the past tense stuff into the game with what we're playing now. You can't introduce Cortana again as his sidekick. We're done with that. That was done in Halo 4.
Yeah,
she wasn't his sidekick
they
in
just
5.
introduced Cortana again as his sidekick, though.
True, that's true.
No, it's not Cortana.
I
exactly.
mean,
But it's not, right? Like they did a good enough job to differentiate to differentiate the two, and I really think it was to also introduce her as the new AI going forward.
Yeah,
closing the chapter on Cortana. That's it, right? Like she means a lot to us, you know, the Halo fans. But at the same time, like the holograms were necessary because that was the only way to bring that story from the past into what we were playing. At least that's how I felt. It could have been better. Other thing, sorry, one more thing, because I wrote down some shit here when Rand was talking. You know, and then the villain, and then just the way that she was in 5, and I understand what you're saying because she was the big badass. You know, she controlled everything. She controlled all the AIs. She went to Sydney. She blew up that Spartan base. And then the one thing that I don't understand till now is what happened to all of her arsenal.
Right. Yes.
Right. Like that. I agree with that because I don't understand. So her main base of operations or her fort was Zeta Halo, right? That's where the weapon locked her down. So she was already locked down on Zeta Halo when the Banished took over the UNSC Infinity. And then when Atriox found out, he went down to Zeta Halo and he found her, and that's when he started talking to her about you know,
he gave her the ultimatum.
Yeah, the ultimatum basically, but she had given him an ultimatum from before.
Yes,
right
when she blew up his home planet.
So then what happened? That's the thing, because I watched one of the Hidden Xperia videos, and he was saying that she went to Atriox. She wanted to get help from the Banished because she knew after she destroyed the base in Sydney that apparently the humans were going to come after her, but the humans were already in shambles, you know, so why would she need help from the Banished? I mean, the only thing that made sense was the fact that both the Created and the Banished hated humanity. So that was one thing that they could partner up on. That's the one common thread that they had. But still, how did she get in that position where she lost all of the Guardians? Was it the Manakite crystal?
Luke,
What was it?
That's
Luke, would you
another
like to
question.
answer?
You're taking us down a whole new thread,
Fuck
Mo.
yeah,
by the
bro.
way.
That's
Yeah.
why we're doing
It's
this.
not time for the transition.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, how did she get to that helpless point?
Right.
That's
There
not
are-
Save that
explained to
segue for.
Yeah.
And I agree
Yeah,
with
what
that
were you saying?
100%. I agree
Yeah.
100%. Yes,
And-
with that point, yeah.
And as someone who isn't as like hardcore into the story and not reading all the comics or whatever, I thought they did a admirable job there. In that one chunk that's missing, I totally agree. I was just like, but like, how did she get to this vulnerable? Oh shit, I really did fuck this all up. Like, how did she get there? Because it seems like there's a chapter missing there. And then also as a joke, I thought of, so Chief, do you have a Norton antivirus? Yes.
Oh my
Could
god.
I see it? Just trust me, Cortana.
Yeah. No,
So I agree with the why, like what Mo was saying in terms of the why Cortana is not going to be in the game anymore, possibly. But Mo, do you not agree also with Rand that the how it happened was kind of bullshit?
But see, I need to understand the angle though. What
Like the how she was killed, like why she was killed, why she's not going to be in the story going forward. All of that stuff that you said makes sense. But don't you think it is a little bit bullshit that the second most important character in the history of Halo is off-screen killed in like an audio log? Like,
so here's the way I understood it. Right, she was fucked either way. She was already locked down, and she was going to get deleted on the Infinity.
no, I'm not talking about the story. What reason? I'm talking about how it was like conveyed to the player in the game. There was no crazy cutscene like in the beginning. There was no gameplay segment.
So I would have liked to see if you're talking about some sort of like final goodbye between the two where they both had like a one-on-one. Sure, yeah,
that or even like like I don't know. Maybe
I think we're reading it.
Her, or there can't be a super dramatic death as we know with an AI like that. So it's tough to, like Mo talked about, go back in time and fill in these gaps, but also have this meaningful, impactful on-screen death. How would they tie that into the story?
Like, how's Chief supposed to get to Cortana?
But that's a problem they need to figure out because they're telling the story.
But I felt like they fucked up so bad. They fucked up so bad with 5 that's to
the
me
point.
It's okay the way that they did this, even though it's not perfect. This is the best way that I felt like they could have at least done it, because how else you're not going to satisfy everybody.
But
You know what I mean? Clearly.
Okay is not Halo. Halo's has to be beyond okay.
Well,
You
so
know what,
here's
though?
what I would like say, and I think Mo's on the right path, but I think to articulate it a little bit better, I think with the developers, the writers now, who are new writers from Halo 5, what they're saying is that this Halo 5 was basically a mistake, right? Cortana she got too powerful, and then she just switched. She took over the like this whole like heel turn just didn't make sense, right, for Halo. And I think what they wanted to do was kind of a soft retcon, right? Like basically it was like to say the end of 4 should have been the end of Cortana and Master Chief.
100%.
And that's what they were saying. And by doing this, who's shaking their head?
Well, no, you know what? I actually like. I agree.
That's what I was saying, though.
Like she should have goodbye in 4 should have been it. But
yes.
Also, I don't know about you guys, but I was super stoked for Cortana to be the villain. If they're actually going to make the villain, and you were going to fight her in future games, and they took it all away.
It
was just like.
It was a wash
people
away.
shit on 5 because they didn't like the direction that it was going. But the thing is about a trilogy is the second chapter always feels weird until you see the end. And so now people are just going to forever say, oh, Halo 5 Guardians was a mistake. It should never have been a game. Well, no, you don't know that because we're never going to get to see what that trilogy would have looked like. Right. You can love things in retrospect, and we will never see the end of that story. So I'm pissed because I think 5, it took leaps and it took risks, just like Halo 4 did with the initial killing of Cortana and all the stuff that Halo 4 did that was a huge deviation from the original. But I think people would have appreciated it in retrospect if they would have gotten to see its actual ending. But now they never will. It'll always look like it was a mistake that they had to erase. And that's just because they shouldn't have listened to the fans.
I mean, they kind of fixed it in a sense because they really kind of retreaded the whole mendicant
retcon.
bias, offensive bias thing.
Yeah, but
They
Right?
fixed it
So-
by openly saying it was a mistake. We agree with you, fans. That's not the same thing. They should have just told the story they wanted to tell, because I think it would have ended up being great.
Sure.
And then
Well, those
now
writers
we
are
got
gone.
through. Yeah, it just
That's true too. That's true too, Abe. That's true.
Those
Too.
writers were let
underrated.
go a long time ago. So, I hear what your point is, Travis. You're right. I think we'll never know like how that could. If Halo 5 would have had more time, because if we heard from Josh Holmes afterwards, he said they really didn't. They really planned to tell a lot more story. That's why things felt like they were missing. That's why it was so messy. They really didn't get to finish the game they wanted to make. So we'll never know what that would have been. We never know what the conclusion would have been. But whatever happened, this team came in there and they basically soft rebooted it. And so like it's like almost like I agree with everybody, but I also I did not. The biggest problem I had is probably similar to everybody else. It almost felt like she did one of these WWE heel turns that wasn't earned. That I'm a bad guy, now I'm a good guy again. And it's like, okay, I killed all these Spartans, but now now I regret it and I don't really know. It's like, like how somebody gets hit with a chair by accident, all of a sudden now they're a bad guy. It didn't make any fucking sense.
He's in the fight now.
Yeah.
Her wake-up call was Chief.
I'm
trying to buy that. Like I've heard that explained to me, and I'm trying to buy. And at the end of the day, I think I'm just okay with them saying that where it was is not where they wanted to be. They wanted to go in a different direction, and it was never going to be a clean unless they were going to go follow through, like Travis was saying. There was probably no clean way to kind of retcon this. So I accept a level of sloppiness. Yeah. I do think they executed pretty well on some of the cutscenes, because I agree with Rand when he says like that last cutscene did hit me too, and usually that stuff doesn't. And I think they did a good job there, just saying, you know what, 4 was our goodbye, and it's almost like. And I think 343 is being kind of slick here. It's like, here's a new puppy. Yes, we know we had to put. Isn't this new puppy cute?
We sent the old puppy off to a ring, and here's your new puppy.
Yeah, and that's kind of what they did. They gave you something back, and I think New Tana is basically like us saying, like rebooting. It is a soft reboot, right? Like you got Cortana again, and 4 should have been that end, but now we're kind of like back to a clean slate where we can kind of take this in now any direction again.
So let me say two things, and I'd like to get your guys' thoughts. Is I think the way we're talking about this, we're making it sound like Cortana was suddenly good for an entire game, and that's not really the case, right? Unless I've got the story all screwed up, you guys can tell me. But what we know of what happened to Cortana was she was the overarching presence in the universe. Yes. Used the Guardians to destroy Atriox's home planet, which we see that cutscene or vision, whatever you want to call it, Echo, where he's just Atriox is a badass in everything he does. He's amazing. But he basically, lets her know later you done fucked up. But she's the bad guy all throughout, right? Then, as Mo already alluded to, the weapon is successful at locking her down, although weapon wasn't deleted, right? And then Cortana finds herself in the place with Atriox, where Atriox now has the upper hand and basically puts an ultimatum to her to say, you can help us, the Banished, or you're gone. We're going to delete you. And she can't do anything about that because she's locked down, right? So the way it's described in the game was that she had, I think she even says it, because I just played it again. She says something like, I had 400 milliseconds to make a decision or to decide what I was going to do. And it's only in that split hair of a moment where, because of Chief, she decides to blow up the ring and help the UNSC as in any way she could in 400 milliseconds.
Right.
Do I have that right?
No, you're right. And that's the thing that's weird, because Halsey herself said she will sacrifice even herself to save humanity, right? Which goes against the tone of what happened in 5.
It does.
And that's where
not really.
How does it not?
She saw herself as saving humanity.
Yeah.
By blowing up the Spartan base in Sydney. She killed the Spartans.
She had to kill part of it. It's sort of like trimming the verge.
Yeah. Okay, pre-rampancy.
It's like Thanos.
It's the purge.
Pre-God Cortana.
That's what she
said.
So
that I'm with you.
But the point I'm making is we're making it sound like there's a whole. Yes, but we're making it sound like there's a whole game now where she's suddenly good again. That's not the case.
No.
Right.
That's not the case at all.
Rand was saying
but
that
it is true that there's no game where she got to be the bad guy, really.
Agreed.
We find
Agreed.
out that he's a bad guy in 5,
Agreed.
but we didn't get the payoff from that, and that's
But-
why I'm pissed off about
Sure.
that part of it.
Yeah, and I guess you could have continued that, but part of that is, well, okay, that's a fair argument, I guess. I was just going to say part of that's due to the timeline they've created with Halo Wars 2, multiple books,
Yes.
everything else that's gone on. The other thing,
But
I
they did it
forgot
because of fans. Because of fans. who
You're
don't
right.
have
You're not
screenwriters.
wrong.
By the way,
That's
didn't she
infinite.
threaten Hood? She
I gotta
threatened
jump
Admiral
out.
Hood.
I gotta go. So I'm just wanted to say thanks for everybody.
Randy, got to go.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I gotta.
Rand,
Something
Mr.
just
Rand.
came up. I gotta go. So
No.
Take care, man.
I appreciate all of you. It was fun talking Halo, and
You're the man, Rand.
enjoy the.
Love
I'm sorry,
you.
I
love you.
I soured it on Cortana. I'm sorry.
No,
This was
I
a
don't know,
great.
like, I felt it could have done. It could have been done so much better, and the feelings I got should have been amplified even more. But
Yeah.
I understand, like they did what they had to do. But whatever. Have a good rest of the night, guys.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you soon.
Good
All
luck.
right.
Later,
See you, man.
Take care, Rand.
Take care, man.
Um,
No, so we were talking about. I mean, didn't she threaten? She threatened Hood, Admiral Hood, before she blew up
Yes.
Sydney. I mean, Travis, you're talking about her thinking that she's helping out humanity, but
Yeah.
she threatened him straight up. She's like, either submit or die.
You
Yeah.
And
can
he's like,
hurt
well, I'm not
humans
going to.
You can hurt humans and still think you're helping humanity. In fact,
Right.
that's how most people hurt humans.
She was
Yes,
one of the
you're
ones.
right.
She was one of the initiators. She helped out with the Spartan program. Like that's the
Yeah.
thing. Like they're
But
her baby.
She now
As much as-
sees the Spartan program as a variable
Yeah.
she can't control, and her primary directive is to help humanity. She sees an orderly, controlled human
Right.
as meeting that directive. So,
Yeah.
from her perspective, I mean, these are the things we would have gotten to explore in a proper Halo 6 that will never exist. So, I'm salty that happened. That said, they made a decision. They made, at the end of the day, whether they were pressured into it or not, they made the game they wanted to make, and this is the story we got. Do I like the story they did? Yes. Do I think it has problems, and do I wish that there was an alternate reality where I could see what Halo 6 was like? Yes, especially since it would have vindicated my belief that Halo 5 is needlessly hated. So there you go.
I don't know, guys. I know there's a few that haven't spoken directly on their thoughts on this, but for me personally, again, as I said, after playing it a second time now, I actually really enjoyed the way they handled Cortana. I really did. I thought they handled it well. She's actually in it for a lot of segments in the later half of that game. There's a lot of echoes, cutscenes, what have you. There's a lot of writing about her. I thought it was handled as well as you can handle it, again, given the circumstances.
Put your hand down.
Question.
I'm surprised, Luke.
No,
I'm
I
surprised
just-
you haven't talked more.
No.
We've been on Halo lore for half an hour, and you just keep looking over here.
Well, I feel like I keep yelling. I feel like I keep. Okay, I have two screens. I feel like I keep yelling over people. I feel bad. What I wanted to note that what Cortana gave us in this game is an avenue for a number of different really cool Halo story elements. We have now the Silexes with the Endless, which are a whole new big bad. We know that on Zeta Halo, the Flood is there. We know that due to Halo Wars 2 and the Lesser Arc, we know that the Flood was still going there, but we don't have answers as to what's going on and why. We also don't know if and how the Prometheans play into this. So what we have potentially in new stories are multiple combat scenarios, and the Banished are still around. They still control the majority of the ring.
Yes.
And that was my favorite part about this whole thing. For all the Cortana cast stuff we just had, her arc ended allowing for the new puppy to grow up. We've got
These poor
so many
dogs.
different directions to go.
You just
And
reminded me of the second thing I wanted to say. Go ahead.
what was really cool is 25 minutes ago, it was mentioned that there were hints that Cortana could still be around. And it's quite possible they are, because they said someone is helping you from inside the ring kind of thing. But it's also possible that's a whole nother Forerunner thing with like the Mendicant or offensive bias,
Yeah.
Forerunner stuff. There's so many ways that we could see and explain Cortana or any of the other enemies, because they're digital, they're copies, they're echoes, they're corrupted, they're not corrupted. There are so many elements that we could see more interaction with it. And I loved that about this story, is that it allowed us to have a start to finish production, beginning to end, and then still have plenty of directions to take it and tell it in a 3-hour story, Hivebuster style, to tell it in a 6-hour campaign and a 10-hour campaign, introduce some new biomes if you want. But there's so much we can do. And that, I think, has gotten lost in all of our discussion there.
No, I think that's fair. I think it's fair. I think all of us are feeling that way, really, is that when you talk about the possibilities coming out of this now, they're endless, no pun intended. But they really are. I think that you said it really well, Luke, is that perception is seemingly lost on some, is that given the convolution of the story, where it was, the mess that Travis, completely agree with your point about 5, but the mess that they feel they had to correct with 5, right? Yeah. So knowing all of that, how they were able to write such a meaningful, touching story with Chief at the center for Infinite, and then still have all these threads open where they can take the story in a number of different ways and add to it. I think that's not an easy task, guys, for any writer developer. No. And they did it pretty damn well.
Yeah, there's a good chance we play as other Spartans plenty of time during Halo Infinite's lifetime. What they did was, in a separate from the story, was they created a wonderful sandbox with superb gunplay, brilliant sound, and visual design that now, when we do want to have a shorter story that's maybe not about Chief, we can step into the role of any other Spartan, into a Marine, to an ODST. Hell, we could literally go save Locke and Palmer and Lasky, and then have a mission or two with them. What better way to show how cool of a character Locke was than to get to play as him now that we've got our primary story? ODST and Reach no longer have to be separate games. You know what I mean? That's what I'm so excited about.
I also think we haven't talked about this at all, but my favorite part of the story was actually the middle, because it sort of didn't have the problems of like the wonky transition from 5 at the beginning and kind of the explaining and ribbon at the end, which was the red flag arc. And I love that arc because you're just like, damn, Master Chief is just cold. He's like about to just ice this queen, like right in front, like to her face. It's crazy. And we wouldn't have gotten that drama without Halo 5 and seeing like his distrust and like his, him becoming like fully broken. So I think like that's kind of the game we would have gotten, like that little snapshot. But that section where he's like, he's still so cold and he hasn't really warmed to her yet. Oh my god! Like I was so like, "Damn, who are you?"
What was that, Chief? What are you saying back there?
Yeah, nothing. Just talking to myself.
Never mind.
Just planning your death.
Just looking over, and I think I see a red flag.
So Asante and Webb both agree, Travis, about Halo 5 being a shame they didn't continue down that arc in theory. And again, I think with any universe where you get this that's around for this long with this much lore, we keep seemingly saying that you have those moments. There's just those moments where things, hypotheticals and theoreticals, become part of the game. So, Miles, you were going to say something.
I was going to say, if with all of these things that are set up, this was a spiritual reboot to Halo Combat Evolved. No denying that. That was obvious in so many ways. One glaring omission from this spiritual reboot of Halo Combat Evolved, which was touched on in the campaign, touched on in a couple audio logs, is the flood. They leave the flood wide open, but they don't do anything with the flood in this at all. And that was one thing going into this that I wanted them to revisit in some way. So soon, if they don't give us a standalone flood story in Halo Infinite's campaign, I will retroactively go back and dock points off of this experience.
Here's my quick take on that, right? Because it's a spiritual reboot.
I do too, Travis.
No, because it's a spiritual reboot, and because we know that his two generals, the two brothers that you kill in Infinite, what are they? I forgot their names.
Hyperion and
yes, thank you. In Halo Wars 2, they accidentally released the flood on the Ark.
That's Pavium and Vortis. That's two different.
Yeah, I thought it was high. Oh, really? I thought it was that. Two different guys. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, then that's my bad. But still, they accidentally released the flood on the Ark, right? And then they had to basically contain it. And Atriox himself told them, He's like, deal with it, or I'll deal with you. So they ended up they spent a lot of time on the arc, basically containing them and killing or whatever the hell it is that they had to do. Is it possible that because this is a reboot now that they're just going to shoo the flood away, considering the fact that this is now a race that cannot be killed by the Halo array?
No,
Like,
I think they use the flood to help control the enemy types. They release them onto each other. I think that's what they're gonna do.
Because this seems to me a worse problem than the flood for the Forerunners.
I think it's meant to be. Be. However, I think what's going to happen is you have the Gravemind, who was one of the original Primordials, and then you have the Forerunner, or the flood released in order to combat the Silexes that are opening up to the Endless. And I think that's kind of the goal. Is that's going to be the only way out of it, because humanity couldn't handle the Banished. It took them 4 minutes, right? So how are they going to handle the Endless? So I think that's going to be what we have. And maybe, and I don't mean this as a joke, maybe that's one of the angles of a potential Halo Wars 3 is bringing in more enemy types and stuff. What they've done is they've given themselves a lot of avenues for a lot of different types of big bad, with the Endless being the new big bad along with Atriox. I mean, Escharum, I know I said this to Joe the other day when we were talking. Escharum was kind of like Loki in the MCU. He's not Thanos. He's
definitely not
this episode's big bad, but he's not the big bad.
I need to make it clear too. He was talking to me. I was not responding. I did not want anything.
He was talking at you.
It was obvious. It was obvious that Escharum was only for this game. I mean, besides the fact that you played the game, because you can tell, especially at the end with the post-credits scene, when you see what Atriox was doing, you're like, motherfucker, this guy was basically eye on the prize. He was thinking big picture.
He's always ahead.
Yeah, well, he told Escharum, he's like, hey man, run shit at the surface, take care of whatever you need to do. I got bigger fish to fry. Like, that's the impression I got from it at the end. And yeah, that's why Escharum only lasted for this game. He still made a hell of an impression.
Now can we get to the next hot topic, which is
no.
Escherum's just sorry.
No, it's
Jordan. Oh, okay. Escherum's just okay. He's
Stop it.
Another
Stop
bad
it.
team.
I was going to
Another
say,
bad
Obviously,
It's
he's
okay.
not Atriox. I think that's
Right.
kind of the main thing. But they can't give you Atriox in because
No.
he's too good
Not
of a
so-
character. I don't
part
want them to kill him off.
Yeah. So and here's the thing, because I know that was going to trigger Mo and Ains. Is so like, he's serviceable. He's all right. He is the Loki. He is not Thanos, and I think he is. It's good that he's an all right villain, because to me the focus is not on Escharum. It really is on Chief and the weapon. And
He's not a villain, Mr. Badbit. He's at the end of the day, he was just a soldier.
Oh, right. Gotcha. That's a cliche.
He was
So-
their chief, guys.
and he was ill. He was sick. Also, he was dying.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I like
because
that
of the
dynamic.
coughing.
Chief
He had
Sick
terminal
Old Man.
cancer.
That's COPD.
Yeah.
He probably had COVID.
Really bad COVID.
Yo, COVID
Really
got to
bad
the
COVID,
ring.
man.
Probably had COVID.
The Banished
They
doesn't
made us
wear
the-
masks.
All those canisters
Can I
came
make
from
my herd
Wuhan.
immunity joke?
My immune system's good enough.
He
all
did his
this
own
time, he didn't know
research.
that the flood
He
was
did his
just
own
COVID.
research.
It's just a metaphor. Just
Yeah,
a
it's just a
metaphor.
metaphor.
God, Halo is so meta. Wow.
So meta. Yeah.
Beautiful.
What a time to be alive.
That was way deeper than I thought.
So let's jump to, we covered Cortana at length. Jump to Escharum then, being the big bad for this game. And I know, as Joe said, he and I know some others don't feel that he was that great of an antagonist. I disagree. I think he was a fantastic antagonist. So I know where some stand on it. Jordan, I'm going to go to you, man. You've been quiet.
No,
What do you think about Escharum at your heart here?
Yeah,
What are
I
your
really liked him.
What are your thoughts?
So first of all,
What
I
are
would
your
just say
thoughts?
that I thought he was very scary and intimidating. So I've played, as someone that's only played like Far Cry 3 and 4, 3, 4, and 5. That's a lot of Far Cry. The comparison is like, you have these antagonists that are just basically just teasing you the entire time, and I always felt that the payoff with those guys never really kind of met with my expectations as far as like what this person's doing when they're always teasing you. So Escharum was always kind of intimidating to me, and I think that was mostly just because of his writing, the things he said, his delivery. Like he was 100% just out to get you just for a fight. And I thought he was convincing in that regard. Was he was he really kind of big bad? No, but he was definitely intimidating, which I thought was what made him an effective antagonist.
Yeah, it's the performance of Escharum, I think, is undeniably incredible. I do kind of agree with Joe that some of his notes and beats were one-dimensional. He was this villain that had to be aggressive and he had to be intense, and it fit his look. But I think really, when you dive into the character a little bit more, you touched on him coughing, and he's putting on this air that he is indestructible. Master Chief has this reputation of being this indestructible force, and Escharum has to match that and oppose dominance over this indestructible force. And I think that's kind of how he did it. And I think, it's one-dimensional until you get to that moment where you've defeated him and he's sitting there dying, and he wants you to just tell people that he fought. And then there's that line from Chief where it's like, at the end of the day, he was just a soldier doing what he thought was right. And there you have that moment where you realize that these two, if they were flipped, it would be the same case. That no matter what, these two were going until they died. And that's been Chief this whole game is, I have to. There's no one else here. I have to go. I'm going to keep fighting until I die, regardless of what I'm faced against, regardless of who my enemy is. And that was Escharum. So there's this cool kind of parallel between the two.
Yeah, absolutely.
The cool thing,
I thought that was great.
The cool thing I liked about Escherum's, his whole dynamic with Chief is because first, Escherum's really old, right? People forget that he mentored Atriox. Atriox was his protege. He mentored him when he was a kid. He trained him. I don't know, the brute military or whatever the hell it was when Atriox was a kid. That's when he actually took him up under his wing. So that's one thing. He's already old, and you can tell he's battle hardened. He's been through a lot of shit. And the one great thing I loved about this game was, despite the fact he was enamored with Chief and what made him so godlike, and at the same time, he kept trying to put him down. He kept trying to remind him, hey, as great as you are, I'm gonna get you. And this is invigorating when I found out you were alive, right? Because that kind of reinforced the legend of Chief, right? You can tell this guy's just looking for the next fucking challenge. He's looking for the next big challenge. It seems like every big challenge in his life, he's overtaken it. He's claimed it. So that's why he kept emphasizing this is my final fight. This is it for me. This is my final fight. And leading up to that, it was so freaking cool to see this whole cat and mouse thing between them, where he just kept taunting him, but you can tell he respects him. He respects him, but he's taunting him at the same time up until they fought. And that for me is what I loved about it. Joe, you're saying he wasn't that great. I don't think he was meant to be.
No. Yeah.
Atriox. No, he was not meant to be Atriox, but for what he was and what he did, I think for the purpose he was that he set out to do for this story, I think he did a great job, man. Because it was. I think he should have been the final fight, man. I don't think it should have been the Harbinger.
No. So real talk, and I agree with you, Mo. I agree. I think overall, again, he's here to do. He's here to serve here's the first guy you need to fight to get to Thanos, right? Again, he ain't the big bad. He's not supposed to be the big bad. And for what he does, he's good. I never thought he was imposing. And yeah, there were some things. Fuck it. I'll take the heat. They do a Far Cry element here in Halo where they introduce this big bad guy and then they introduce midway through out of nowhere that he's sick and dying. So that, I was just like, all right, I've seen this literally 2 months ago and it was not rewarding. That's the one thing that I don't like. But again, at the end of the day, the focus is Master Chief and the weapon. The one enemy that I do not like, I'll just flat out say, the Harbinger. As someone who's not as, into the lore or know much of the lore, I just found her to be...
She was anticlimactic to say.
She was a vessel, man. Yeah. She was just a vessel to introduce that.
Exactly. And it could have been a little bit more than just
the first blood spore.
I'm going to say the endless about 7 times so that you know the endless are a thing. And I have one enemy type, and I will say the
Copyright
endless
pending.
a couple more times. Exactly. In a week, it'll be all settled. And the endless. Look at my weird flappy lips. All right, goodbye. You know? And that was...
So
They also
I
weren't
think
clear.
I
was
think
a good impersonation.
Escharum is really good at doing what he was meant to do, which is like basically from the first moment he shows up, you know he's not the main villain of the game. I kind of kept throughout the game trying to look over his shoulder. I was like, who's the real guy? Is it Atriox? Is it this Harbinger lady? Is it Cortana? Like, who's behind you, Escharum? Like, that's sort of the way I was taking it on. But I think the point is that now they've got a lot of next people you can fight, right? They've got the Endless, and, you know, maybe the Harbinger wasn't climactic. I would argue that Halo has always had really terrible final boss fights. It's just sort of their tradition at this point.
Yeah.
But they've got that. They've got, you know, the possibility of the Prometheans coming back, the Flood coming back. I hope they do it all, because I agree. I know some of you aren't a fan of Prometheans, but I think the problem with
I love them.
There we go.
like
Good. You're a smart man, Ains, sometimes.
And I'm Mr. Bad Take, Ains. I'm Mr. Bad
here-
Take, but Prometheans are fine.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
fair enough.
here's the thing, Joe. Prometheans are only bad when they're the main mob you fight throughout the game. They don't really do well when they stand alone, but they're great as part of the Halo sandbox. They're kind of like the Flood. Like when you're just fighting Flood, you're like, wow, this is annoying, but it's annoying because they have mechanics that are clever and make them kind of a pain in the ass to deal with. But when you fight Prometheans alongside Covenant, possibly alongside Flood and the Endless, I just think it adds something to the sandbox that they need. The way that the Prometheans interact with each other and revive one another and give each other shields. It's irritating when you're getting your ass kicked, but it's so cool in the Halo sandbox. And I'm envisioning this world in the future where it's all in Halo Infinite, and it makes me so excited.
Yes.
So I would just say, don't make it the only thing you fight, but it should be part of the sandbox, please.
Agree to disagree.
I know.
I'm just being
You
wiped
don't like the
out.
Flood either?
No.
No, I love the Flood. I love
They have the same
Flood.
problem though, right? Like they're
In fact,
Flood are fun and cool.
I'd argue that the Flood are less dynamic than the Prometheans.
They
But
definitely
that's
are. I
what
agree
makes
with
them
you.
interesting. They are like
That's
a
what makes them
complete contrast.
interesting. That
Yeah, they're
not
complete.
dynamic.
Yeah, no, they're like Starship Troopers. Like you just get these waves, and you're just like, I actually like that in CE. I know, like I didn't like the library the first time I played it either. But when I kind of figured out, like just grabbing a shotgun and you're spinning in circles, and it's just getting sweaty. You know, they're right up in your face when you're blasting them, and like. It does change the pace, and I think that Prometheans don't do that as much. But I'm getting off topic. I want to just talk about Escharum really quick. I think one of the interesting things about the Banished that I didn't expect going in, and you saw this with the propaganda towers, and you just talked about like Escharum, like coughing and being old. Like a lot of what gives them their strength is like their ability to make people believe. Right? It's that fierceness. And it's this like gravitas that they have. And then he talked about being like the mentor to Atriox. I feel like Atriox is probably the one guy that actually embodies what they try to project, right? Like he's maybe that guy that has that he's like the LeBron that can come in there and actually be that guy. But in general, I feel like a lot of the Banished, like their strength, and even if you go to Halo Wars 2 and kind of see how they form, it is getting people to really believe, and they just kind of go fearless and they go straight forward. And I think that intimidation factor is what makes them different. And what's interesting about Escharum is he kind of mirrors Chief in a lot of ways, especially in this game, because not only are they both soldiers, but you saw like how Chief was vulnerable, how he got his ass kicked, right? Like how he's not as invincible as maybe he's projected to be. But then throughout the game is interesting because like as you run up on soldiers and things like that, like it's almost like they keep giving you that feeling like oh, we can believe again, or we're in this again, like let's go, like that they have that similar kind of appeal, right? It's like almost like they're inspiring. They're like they're more than just being a soldier. They're kind of inspirations, and I think that's what Escharum and I think that's where they kind of saw each other as mirrors towards the end. right? Which
That's
is kinda-
Atriox, bro.
Exactly.
That's all the propaganda towers are really just honor Atriox, whatever it was. You know, I mean, he
Build
is
the wall. Yeah.
But I feel like
Yeah.
Spartans in some ways are that too. Like they're kind of like the propaganda for humans.
Well, they
in some
respect Escharum obviously because he's a second in command.
Yeah.
So you know, I mean, he's the next big badass after him. But
Yeah. So a lot of comments on Escharum too. Sante says, "Loved his speeches, Shakespeare and his delivery." Logan commented on the death scene, as we said. I like the death scene more than most games. Me as well. Bear with me. Dutch says, "Oh, that's on Harbinger." Excuse me. Sorry, guys. Elu, welcome, Elu. Good to see you, man. He says, I was hoping for a Cortana and boss fight, honestly. I think, Elu, you came late because we talked at length about Cortana's
There's
arc.
a lot, guys.
Yeah, we talked a lot. So go back and you can see if you agree with all the comments we had on that. And then I think someone else said one point that we missed. It might have been Dutch actually said that Escharum thought Atriox was dead because Atriox was on the Infinity when it blew up. Is that accurate or no?
I don't think Escharum knew. I think Escharum knew Atriox was alive. There's no way. There's no way his second in command is not going to know that he's alive and he's out there doing something.
Okay.
I don't know, man. Like,
I was pretty
you
convinced
think
he didn't know.
You think
I don't know how-
Escharum did
that's-
not?
that's
You
how I
think
felt,
Escharum
too.
did not know Atriox was alive?
I don't think it would be the worst kept secret if he had known that. He's like always pumping his chest about how awesome Atriox is. He wouldn't be like he's alive.
Yeah.
How would he be able to relay that information based on
The
like
what
what
reason I
happened to
thought-
him in
I
the
thought
ring?
that-
So then, what was Escharum doing? Then what was his final?
He was finishing the war for
He was
Atriox.
delaying. He was finishing the war. He was delaying Chief. Remember the whole point of what Escharum and the Banished and the Harbinger were doing.
They slowed
was
him down.
giving Atriox enough time to get to the Endless.
That's
Which
why
means
they
he
took
knew
the
he was
power
alive.
siege from one side
That's
of the room
fair,
to
Mo.
the other.
Fair.
There you
Why
go.
was he slowing?
Joe.
Why were they slowing Chief down?
Well, the way
The
they
reason
You're
presented
used
it
to
was
walking
because
simulators, Joe. Come on.
There's some of the data pads where you can hear Escharum talking and he sounds like there's genuine remorse. And I feel like if they wanted him to say that he knew that Atriox was alive, they
fair
could have
point,
added
yeah.
a data pad at the end of the game where he was like, haha, I'm fooling everybody. They didn't do that.
Yeah. Cortana blew the ring in. Yes.
That's a fair point too. Yeah, that's let's get to the Harbinger, bro.
Okay, so let's move to the Harbinger then. So Harbinger is it's a character.
It's a new species.
Yes. So I mean we've half touched on this already. So you can talk about her as the last boss fight if you want. Myself, I'm kind of with you guys. I don't think it was anticlimactic, but I kind of feel that way at the same time, if that makes sense. Like I didn't think it was terrible, but I don't think it was like some great culmination of the game. You know, I felt more meaning fighting Escharum than I did Harbinger, right?
Meaning, sure. But I will tell you guys this. If you think it's anticlimactic, you have told me that you did not play her on Legendary. Because that
bad
boss
on
fight
Legendary.
is brutal on
I did-
Legendary.
I almost
Yes,
there.
it does not feel anticlimactic.
Okay, that's
Brutal.
gameplay
Brutal.
difficulty, not story, though.
Yeah.
But it feels way more climactic when you're like, dude, this like we're screwed. We're screwed.
agree.
if
Oh,
they
yeah,
show
yeah,
up
that's
because
fair.
It's so
That's fair.
hard. Yeah.
It was tough.
So, well, I think that's the point, right? Is I mean, the name in itself, Harbinger, is named for a reason, right? She's a forebearer of what's to come, meaning
I
the
also read
endless,
the
right?
chat.
The what?
Said I also read the chat.
Did I miss something in the
Fucking
chat?
got
Someone put that in chat. Yeah.
Oh no, I mean that is what it means. I didn't see that. But anyway, so forebear what to come with the endless, and that's the point, I think, is that she was such a difficult challenge for our ultimate warrior, literally our best warrior that humanity can create, can barely handle one of these things, right? Now we have the endless coming back with Atriox still alive, of course. So go ahead and talk about, I mean, whatever you guys think on the Harbinger being the final battle, but also obviously what she was setting up. Also, let's not forget that she played a key role throughout the story, right? Obviously working with the Banished, interactions with Escharum, etc. So
Why was
So
she?
I was
Why
not
was she
bothered.
chosen though? Why
Well,
was
I
she the one? Why was her Silex the one that was opened? Like
I
that
don't
was
think we
mo-
know yet. I don't think we know
okay.
yet.
Okay, so we're
Yeah,
not
we
meant
don't
to
know,
know.
but-
Okay.
yeah,
I
they
do
drew a
think,
straw out of a hat, you know, just
Yeah,
she's
there's a
the
random.
I mean-
draw.
No, she was chosen. she was chosen for sure, but I don't think we know why and how just yet.
I have a theory that if the reporting is true that happened this week, that a lot of the game was cut, it was very heavily on the endless side of things. I think that they ended up focusing on Escharum a lot more than they thought they would when they set up the original campaign, because it does sort of feel like a tease or an afterthought, and I feel like there was probably a lot more there. I mean, we kind of are introduced to what the endless mobs are going to feel like, but we get one new enemy type, and it's not that scary of an enemy type either. You know what I mean? So
it's kind of like the flyers in
those are endless as well.
Yeah,
those are considered endless as well. Those, what are they called? Those
skimmers.
Yes.
We didn't get a full like mob set.
Yeah.
We just got kind of one new enemy type. And I feel like a lot got cut on the endless story, and we ended up getting a lot more Escharum and banished than they intended.
By the way, the skimmers are kind of like the Prometheans, by the way. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's why they're a bad enemy type.
I didn't think they were a good enemy type either, but they're better than the stupid flyers from Halo 2 or 3.
Yeah.
But I would say, seriously, to the point of the cuts, the game was long enough. And
it was.
As I would have been, I think we would have lost more people in Halo than we would have gained if the game had been much longer. Because, you know, think about normal or heroic, like the game's 12 hours, right? At its max. And I think if you had a longer first-person shooter campaign that's also heavily multiplayer, you're going to miss out on getting new players in. My hope and my feeling is that we get some shorter vignettes and get some more story stuff, but that it decreases the amount of time before we get a Halo sequel proper with the endless.
Yep.
And they've got the engine and stuff. There's a lot of
a year. How long do you think?
I think a year.
I
think
they've
got Starfield.
I will
think
say
a year and a half.
I think the
18
goal
months.
long term is
18
one a year, but I think we might have like a almost 2-year period before we get the first one.
I think it's a year and a half.
That long?
I think 18 months.
We got to wait 6 months for co-op. Like, you got to think about those timelines.
Yes.
You got to clean up the game first, but you're already within 18
on
months.
other stuff.
But we don't know how much they already have done that was cut out too.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's
You
true.
know, there's,
But I think
there's
their
maybe
cadence is
they
gonna
delayed
be-
co-op because it's coming with the first expansion. I guess I just play a lot of games
Travis,
as a
I
service
hope
game.
so.
Travis,
Yeah, that is, you're setting
I
that
love
bar
your
high.
optimism.
Yeah,
I love it.
you're
I
way too
respect it.
optimistic.
If they
Yeah.
landed
Build
that
a new
hard,
engine. It's going to be a lot easier for them to build stuff. It's not going to
You're
be
way
like
way
day on
too
the plan.
optimistic.
what I'm hoping is co-op was delayed because they're going to make it so your multiplayer Spartan and the Academy world gets merged together, and that's how they explain co-op in the campaign.
Now I think you're being optimistic. I think there's going to be two Master Chiefs for
to
sure.
that point though, if our
what we need is some
customized
more
Spartans-
pessimism.
If our customized Spartans can make their way into a story, I'll be so happy, because I loved that about Reach. And if all these unlocks that I'm getting and stuff that I get for multiplayer can now be applied to a character I can play in a version of Halo Infinite single player, I will be very happy. I would find that very rewarding.
Why else
So-
would you have any story in Academy? Like, that's what I don't get, is why they're stressing that there is a story that ties into the campaign for Academy, which is the multiplayer suite of Halo. Why on earth would you do that if there was no intention of merging those worlds?
And why kill off the canon proper Academy for Spartan Force? You know, like Leonidas blew up that station,
Right.
and so there are elements there. But the bigger thing is, when do we get the next campaign? That depends likely on its size and
course.
which story they choose to tell first. But I do think, and I said Starfield because I think what they're trying to do is get pillar games, and Halo's a pillar event. Starfield is holiday of next year. Redfall is this summer. And they need to clean up some stuff. They've got co-op. They got to get.
It's not
ready to
coming
go,
this year.
Forge.
There's
Yeah, no
nothing.
way.
I guarantee you, there's nothing coming in 2022 for Halo
Yeah.
first.
Agreed.
Single player.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be so sure though. I mean, look at Halo Infinite. They launched it in December, after Black Friday, after the period you're supposed to get your big game out. I think you guys are.
It was unfinished and it should have been delayed.
And I got the space groundhog textures to prove it.
Boy,
Yeah.
But they got it before Christmas. You know,
I played the game and I fell through the graphics. I swear to God, it happened.
So let me say this, because Luke, I agree with you in that you made a good point, in my opinion, of this game was the right size. I think if you there's a million stories to tell here, and I think, as we've already said, they did a good job of setting up what can come in the future and allowing them to build these other bite-sized campaigns or bigger campaigns, however they decide to do it. I think that we hear stories about things being cut, and it's like there's no way that. I mean, yeah, give him 10 years, but there's no way you could have covered everything we've talked about in one game. It would have been convoluted. It would have been a mess. It wouldn't have flowed well. And I think they did an excellent job, Travis said earlier, of making a beginning, a middle, and an end of a campaign proper and allowing the Halo sandbox to shine. So I want you guys, because Elu's going off in the chat. Elu came in late, so he hasn't heard the whole conversation here.
Elo seems like he really hated the game.
He said this
like we hated the game a half hour ago.
He said this, and I completely disagree with it. That's one of the main things that bother me with it. It feels like there was much more that's not there from the world-size mission structure, and like literally, I couldn't disagree with that more. I feel like the mission structure was core Halo, literally the same as Halo campaigns in the past, while also giving you more of the Halo sandbox to play around in, but without being Ubisofty or convoluted or just bloated. So where are you guys at on that as an overarching kind of viewpoint of the whole game? Where are you guys at on that?
So I think like I'm not like all the way over where Elu is, but I also kind of disagree that the game is perfect length. My like major takeaway or major kind of issue with the game is I think it was like one more mission shy of being like a amazing experience or like the best Halo story or campaign ever. When you guys were talking about Escharum, I didn't get a chance to talk to say anything, but like you were comparing him to Loki. I think a really good comparison with Escharum would be with Baldur in God of War. And the reason why Baldur in God of War is so awesome, he is still the Loki. Like the story goes further, whatever. But the reason why he's so awesome is because you have that gameplay engagement with him. And we don't have that with Escharum until the very end. Like there's no, like everything that he says to you and every encounter you have with him is through a hologram or a cutscene where he's doing something else. And then at the end of the game with the Harbinger, when I beat that boss fight and the cutscene triggered, and like the whole building started to blow up, I was so fucking ready for like that Maw mission, the like grapple hooking out of the falling structure and everything exploding and be awesome. But then the achievement unlocked for beating the game, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, I just think that it really, really needed that one more mission. I don't think that it needed like a whole other game. Like it wasn't like that empty, like maybe what Elu's saying, but I really don't think it was perfect. I think it just needed one more mission to just fix maybe one or two of those
you didn't question where that portal came from at the end when you beat her?
But I don't want the portal. I'd rather get to the very end of the exploding
because
building.
that's convenient.
Maybe Chief doesn't make it to the end like in the Maw, and instead of him like just making it in time, maybe that's when the portal comes. But the mission, the Maw, or like the longsword mission, or the end of Halo 3, like those are the most iconic things in all of the Halo campaigns, right?
But the end of Halo 3 ended a trilogy. This is the beginning of trilogy. This is beginning of something new.
Yeah, I'm not talking about narrative stuff. I'm just talking about the driving a warthog with a timer through an exploding building. That when that happened in 2001, I couldn't tell you anything that was as exhilarating as that in any game I had ever played. And I still don't know if there's many things that match that like 20 years later. And this game is supposed to be like Microsoft's biggest punch, and I'm comparing it to God of War because I think God of War is Sony's biggest punch, and God of War has that moment where you fight Baldur in the very beginning that sets him up as this amazing antagonist without him actually being the big bad at the end of wherever that game's going to go. And I didn't get that with Escharum, and that, like I said, the Maw and the end of Halo 3, like the gameplay aspect of it was so awesome, and that doesn't happen in Halo Infinite. And I think that those those two things, like hashtag one more mission.
Wait, one question before I need to cut in. Ains, is that comparison fair? Can you make that comparison?
What comparison?
Comparison between
Baldur and Escharum.
By the way, I made the comparison to God of War last week with Mo because Mo made it first, and I got yelled at. I got yelled at.
I'm just trying to understand.
That is an amazing comparison.
So here's the rules, Joe. The rule is you can only compare a game to another game if Ains likes the game.
If Ains likes
the game.
Ains, I don't know if you know this, but everything.
The guy who said he doesn't like God of War.
Word for word,
I do
what
like
you said about God of War applies to Breath of the Wild, and Breath of the Wild came.
No, it doesn't,
man.
No, it doesn't.
Stop it.
No, it doesn't.
Okay,
It does. I agree with Luke.
Hold on. We're off track and we're way too loud. So Luke, I'll tear you apart on cast about this. Okay, so we'll
Bring
cover it
bro.
then. I'll
Bring
tear
it.
you and Ben
I'll
take
be
at
in
the same
comment.
time.
Helps an audience understand.
I'll
I
be in the
already
comments
tore you
to
apart,
defend.
Travis. Forget
No, you
about it.
didn't. You lost.
No, you
that debate.
didn't.
It was so
He was
clear.
right.
Oh,
I
because
was
he
right.
read your notes, Luke. Calm down. Anyway, moving
just
on.
like to
Because
get a-
Travis
I
is
like
the
to
best
get a
derailer
razzle.
ever.
Okay,
He's the best derailer ever.
Eric gave his perspective that it's not a perfect game, and I think I've had enough kind of gripes with it to express that I don't think it's perfect either.
Yeah.
But at least at the IGN scale, which is how my brain works when I'm criticizing games, a 10 means it's a masterpiece, and I would describe Halo Infinite as without a doubt being a masterpiece level work. I think it is 343's like obviously the best game that they've ever done. I think it's a landmark game for the Halo franchise and also for first-person shooters, both in the multiplayer sandbox and in the campaign. Would you guys agree with that? Gripes aside, shortcomings aside,
Everything
that
together,
it is a masterpiece level.
I do agree.
work.
Let me give you my perspective on this. Right, a year and a half ago, there's no fucking way I thought that this game would be what it is right now. I think a lot of us. I think a lot of us were in the same mindset, especially after the delay and whatnot. Right, there's been so much shit talked about the studio. There's been so much shit talked about the game and the revolving and the carousel of creative directors that have come and gone and all the developers and whatnot. A lot of us approached this time. We were all looking forward to it, but there was a lot of trepidation heading into December. So the fact that we got what we got, and even though it's not perfect, but for what it is and for what they did, they honestly, just the fact that they exceeded my expectations for what they were going to do for me is enough for me to just be in love with it. You can call me a Halo Slappy. Again, I don't give a shit. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm
a
here.
Halo
But
Slappy.
they exceeded what I thought they were going to do. And that for me is more than admirable. Because they're on the right track.
Yeah. So let's do this, because Travis, you kind of jumped the gun of our overall thoughts, or Mo did. I'm sorry, overall thoughts on the game.
Knows me.
Yeah. So let's do that. I was going to go around one by one to kind of not rate the game with a number, but just give your kind of final impression of it, and then let's quickly touch on the setup with Atriox at the end, because we can't overlook that, right? So, Mo, you just gave yours. Is there anything you else want to add? Anything else you want to add? Excuse me.
No, that's it. Honestly, I just think they established a good base. It's not going to satisfy everybody, but for what they were and what they had to deal with and the shit that they had to put aside, just I give them a lot of credit for how they ended up tying it all together. It's not perfect, but it works. And at the end of the day, that's what we wanted. We wanted something that works, and we wanted something that would satisfy us, at least like the core Halo fans. Like, I mean, I think most of the core Halo fans are saying like, okay, this is a good start. It's not perfect.
Even the not
but
core
it's a
Halo
very
fans.
good start. Even if
love
you're not,
this game, which is crazy.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So that's really my take on it. So you can skip me for the rest
Miles?
of it.
Yeah, it's what's wild about this game is the fact that it's out. There's been so much drama and heated conversations leading into this
There's a
about
bar.
what I want, what Halo has to do for me for this to be a good Halo game. And again, I'm kind of in the same camp where I love Halo. There was no world where this Halo was ever going to be bad for me. Like, there was no world where I would play Halo Infinite and go, this is terrible. I'm really upset. Like, there's never, that's even my least favorite Halo. That's never happened. I've never been upset playing a Halo game. So that wasn't how I was going into this at all. But for 343 to exceed pretty much all of my expectations, like we talked about with the delay, Mo touched on the delay, the concerns with Halo 5's campaign and how that ended. Again, I didn't have a huge problem with Halo 5's campaign. I wasn't in the camp that Halo 5's campaign was bad, but I was in the camp that Halo 4 and 5 were really convoluted in a way that wasn't interesting to me. The story beats were too scattered. There was too many ideas and too many extracurriculars that I had to do to really enjoy the lore. And for me, the sandbox of Halo has always been where the franchise has shined. So again, like talking about the reasons I love Halo Combat Evolved, sure, the story was great and there were compelling story beats, but the story was not the reason I loved Halo and played Halo over and over and over and over again. So for them to come out with this game and have it be the best feeling Halo that's ever been made, that is outrageous. That is not something I expected.
That's a huge compliment, man.
That is like this I can say is easily one of the best feeling first-person shooters I've ever played, if not the best feeling first-person shooter I've ever played. And that means more than, like I said ahead of launch, the story could have been absolute garbage. It could have been a dumpster fire of a story. I'm not saying it was, because I enjoyed the story thoroughly, but the story could have been garbage. And if the gameplay was as good as it would have been, as good as it is, it still would have been one of my favorite games of the year. But I was not expecting Halo Infinite to be my game of the year. Even as a huge Halo fan, I wasn't expecting Halo Infinite to be the game that I loved the most this year. And that's where we're at. And it's awesome that 343, they did it. They stuck that landing.
Well said. Well said. Joe, your turn. I updated your name appropriately, by the way.
Oh, okay. So I'll too much power here. Too much power. All right. So no, all the comparisons aside, I really, really love what they did here. And I kind of echo what Miles said for the most part, which is, if you told me after, X amount of creative directors leaving that this game was going to be anywhere decent or even a game of the year contender, I tell you that you're crazy. And seeing where this game is now at its core, it's excellent. The multiplayer is right now untouchable. It is the thing to play. And I think last week kind of proved that people are interested in Halo again, especially the multiplayer. Whether it's come out in parts and playlists, that's one thing. But when it comes to the single player side of things, I think this story is the best story that Halo has, that 343 has told, and even that Bungie has told. This story is excellent. As Travis, the guy that likes movies but will end up duking on your chest in multiplayer, will tell you, this gave me those feelings of why I love a good PlayStation experience. It's because of the stories that they tell. And this game was on that level for me, just strictly between, the weapon and Chief. And that story, that personal element, when you take all the cosmic, storytelling aside and you get to the personal elements, I think this game really, really hit on. The open world may not have been for me per se, but when you get to the corridor, what I feel like Halo is, there's nothing that even comes close. I think the level design there in its linear paths is just phenomenal. So I really, really loved Halo Infinite. It's fantastic. And if this is the foundation, the house that they are going to build here in the next 10 years or whatever, I can't wait to see what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And it's like, just like Breath of the Wild.
Get him up.
That's the same.
I just do it to get him. Like, he gets so angry,
Just compare
I'm passionate about Halo, man. I'm sorry. The one you haven't played. Go ahead, Travis.
Next week, it's the game. I have a day set aside to play through the whole thing. So I've already said this before on Bitcast, but Halo Infinite did end up being my game of the year. I also didn't think it would be, just based on how, Halo, Forza Horizon 5 came out this year. There's lots of, good games that I really enjoyed. But it is my game of the year. And I do think if I were reviewing it for IGN, a 9 means amazing. I think it at least hits that bar. A 10 means masterpiece. And reading from the description, it says, there's no such thing as a truly perfect game, but those that earn a masterpiece label from IGN come as close as we could reasonably hope for. These are classics in the making that we hope and expect will influence game design for years to come as other developers learn from their shining examples. And I think that's that fits the description. Like, what FPS creator isn't going to look to Halo for its multiplayer, both in terms of weapon design, sandbox, its playlist system, its community management, incredible. Like the fact that they're responding to feedback so quickly.
Yes.
and all that stuff. Obviously, they're probably not going to look to it for progression and some of the stuff that's not as good. And then on the campaign side as well, like this hybrid linear story and semi-open world hub, and just like the fun that they have in that world. Just sure, drop in some Marines on a rocket hog and give them all sniper rifles, just like stupid stuff like that. I just think is so good that I really hope it influences game design for years to come. I hope that in a couple years, instead of talking about Breath of the Wild, we're talking about, oh, is this their Halo Infinite moment? I really hope that is a thing. And so, yeah, for me, it probably would be a 10 by that definition. I loved this game. It's one of my favorite games.
And then that's when Ains will allow those comparisons.
Of course. Allow it.
Yeah.
That. Yeah.
Gosh.
Lazy comparison. Lazy comparison.
What do I do here? It is a lazy comparison.
It's
Anyway.
not.
Lazy,
It
it's
helps
just
you
not
understand.
I
Yeah, it
think
helps
you're getting
dumb people.
I think you're getting lazy.
maybe get
confused
an
with
idea.
Unoriginal
See,
comparison.
okay, hold
I
on.
will give you.
We got to do this. We have to do this. I'm sorry, you made me do it. You made me do it. Here. The reason Breath of the Wild is such a perfectly apt comparison for Halo Infinite is the fact that when Breath of the Wild came out, it was a reimagining, a reinvigoration of
Thank
the
you.
Zelda franchise.
Yes.
Based on
Yep.
open world elements of other games, but
Yep.
incorporated in a way that was wholly Zelda. Halo Infinite is exactly that. It is a reimagining of Halo in an open world setting that takes ideals and fundamentals that are core to Halo. So Breath of the Wild in the example of Halo Infinite is the most apt comparison that we can make when it comes to Breath of the Wild comparison.
I think it's God of War.
God of War
did
came
the
out
same
after
thing.
Breath of
God
the
of-
I
Wild.
was gonna say, Mo,
God of
you want to
War-
take this one or
Hold
should
on,
I?
no. God of War. You have God of War, which was very standard third person for the first three, and I'm a huge God of War fan, so I feel like I at least have a say in
One, you're a
this.
huge Zelda fan too.
Mo,
I love
you're
Zelda as
right.
well.
You're
Yeah.
right. The difference is we're not saying your
Sandbox.
comparison is lazy. We're
Yeah,
just saying,
that's
sure,
right.
compare it to God of War. We're
No.
comparing to Zelda for our
What
reasons.
I'm saying is because God of War itself also opened up a semi-open world in 2018. It established a semi-open world. It changed up the gameplay. It kept some of the core fundamentals, like you were saying, Miles, right? But it also ushered it into a new era for the series. So basically, you felt like you were playing God of War, but it was a completely different setup. It was a completely different system. It was a new feel, and that's exactly what they did over here. And then on top of that, the one-shot camera, the emotional punch that they gave you. He used to be a one-dimensional ogre,
Damn it.
and now they introduced his son, and now they introduced different layers and elements to him and his relationship with him, and just him always questioning himself. Like that to me, I'm like,
oh,
Again,
Okay.
nobody is saying
You gotta
that that's
do
a
the-
bad comparison.
good
comparison.
Nobody has said that's a bad comparison. Like I agree. I think God of
Yeah.
War is another
I
prime
hate
example of a long-running series that has reimagined itself.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild is not a lazy comparison. Sure, it's easy. It's easy, but
It's easy. It's not
unoriginal.
lazy.
It's
Okay.
unoriginal
Yeah.
comparison. It's not lazy. People
It's just
who
'cause
say
people have
has
done it for
reason-
other
Unoriginal and
games.
easy, but not
It's a
lazy. Okay, fine. We'll agree there. It's unoriginal and easy. Unoriginal and easy isn't lazy.
Honest-
I learned
honestly,
something
Miles,
tonight.
I know where you're
Honest-
coming from.
Honest to
You-
goodness, who gives
that's a good
a shit? Who gives a shit if
Ains
it's
cares.
lazy? It's a good comparison when you're comparing the open world elements and the gameplay elements of
Yeah, it
Halo
is.
to this. And,
How they
and
translate.
when you're comparing it narratively, I would say that God of War is a lazy comparison.
I just
But
I don't get
it's
your-
still a
I don't
great
get- I don't get why
comparison.
people are so mad
If-
about the comparison. It's not like
Yeah,
we're saying
like
that
it's fine.
20
You're helping
Wild.
people. You're helping people visualize a concept.
I articulated
clear
exactly
way.
why it's an apt.
You did.
Yeah.
You did. And you realize I didn't argue with you. I'm waiting
Yeah.
for you guys to shut up so we can move on.
You did this. You did
Yeah,
this.
it's your fault.
Look at
How do we
we're
segue?
getting
I haven't said a
so
word.
emotional.
How do we
Getting
segue to that?
so
Go,
emotional.
Luke. Go, Luke, go.
I know. You've got four people
What are your
yelling
thoughts, Luke?
the same thing. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? Okay, move
Now, Luke,
on.
you've played both Legend of Zelda and Halo for about 10 odd years.
And I've
What are
got
your
like,
thoughts?
I'll just say I've got like 60 or 70 hours in Breath of the Wild. It's not like I don't know the game. I know the game. But anyway, moving on. And Luke,
Yes.
we're back to what we thought of this game, Halo Infinite.
Good
What-
segue.
As as someone who really enjoys all of Halo, and I mean that books, comics, everything that goes into it, you had really high expectations going into this game. Where did you land with it at this point?
All of our fun, joking, criticisms, praise aside, I am grateful for this game. It came at the end of a 2-year spell of a pandemic and a much longer spell of not knowing what was going to happen with the Halo franchise. And this game absolutely met and exceeded all of my expectations and hopes. There are threads of story that are just waiting to be tugged on and told. There were gameplay elements that allowed me to experience the world that I've been reading about, building and everything, building from Mega Bloks to reading comics to reading books to watching films and reading and listening and stuff. It allowed me to play out a lot of those greater Halo fantasies that we have, and I am grateful to 343 for having it. It's rare that I get emotional about the gameplay of a game, and I really was. There were multiple times where I got to go in and be my version of Chief, what I wanted to do, and pull out a sniper rifle to take down a high-value target before having to grapple hook to certain things, and getting to choose how I leveled Chief up and how I wanted to tackle this story. We've talked about the beginning, middle, and end of this story, and sometimes I'm like, I don't know where the middle of the story was for you guys versus me. I'm without a doubt grateful to 343 for what they were able to accomplish with this game. I hope that at some point I'm able to actually thank them for it, because it really did do something special for me in the gameplay world, and it's just a wonderful experience. I could wax poetic for a while. I really appreciate it. I just really, I mean, I like building the Mega Bloks of it. I like reading the comics. Like, come on, this world is special to me. It is a Star Wars level story for me. A very small thing. I know it's on Halo Infinite, but when I had arm surgery years ago, my wife came back with me. They lock you back there for a little bit, and that you can't leave or anything else. And under anesthesia, I apparently began with when the Spartans were grabbed by Halsey and told her the whole story of Halo, right?
Wow.
She's never let me forget that. And she's forgotten some of the stories. So every now and again, I go back and tell her. It's just a special game, and I'm grateful for it. And I loved it. There will be a time where I go back and solo legendary it. At some point, I'm grateful for it. I'm sorry for rambling, but I really did.
You're fine.
I felt strongly about it.
I wish you would have recorded that retelling of the Halo story.
Yes.
I feel like that would have been the lore YouTube recap we all needed.
Yeah.
It began in 2355.
I think C Webb here in the chat said something really cool, where he said, first he said that they managed to make a story about Spartan, an AI, and the pilot like truly human, right? And he said that the main theme is hope, which I think is why it resonated with me so much. Having a story be fundamentally about hope is what I really needed at this time. And I don't think he's alone in that, right? I think that probably hit many people the same way.
That's kind of what I was. Yes, that's a better way of saying what I started to say. Yeah.
All right, cool. Jordan, hit us.
Yeah. So I could not tell you how many times I played the second level in Halo CE, just the Halo level, and just roaming around, basically picking whichever order I wanted to rescue these Marine distress beacons, essentially. And that's essentially what we got here with this map. Is just one massive version of that, and it's continuously engaging for me the entire time. From a production standpoint, I think they really delivered on that tagline of like become Chief, because from the beginning they keep this seamless transition from gameplay into the helmet of Master Chief. All of the HUD elements, like when he's downloading upgrades for all your armor, when he's activating these passwords and everything, it all disappears on screen. So you really feel like Master Chief in this, more so than anyone. And I guess every single one of them, you felt more like Master Chief, but like here, like I really do feel like I'm playing as him in this.
You have become my son.
I have become. We have become our son. Yeah, that's kind of all we got there on that, man. I love the game so much, and it is my game of the year as well.
Okay, awesome. Eric.
Okay, so I came into Halo Infinite, and this might be my own fault. This might be a bad thing that I did. But anyways, my main kind of point of reference or main kind of measuring stick that I was using as I played this campaign was God of War. And it wasn't any philosophical reason or anything like God of War changed X, Y, Z or whatever. It's not the Breath of the Wild thing. It's just I think God of War is the best campaign, or like was the best campaign that I had ever played. So that's obviously why I would use that as a measuring stick. And I do think that Halo Infinite fell slightly short on the story for a lot of the stuff that we talked about here and a lot of stuff that we didn't get a chance to talk about. But the foundation is there for great things to come. It being foundational, like it being like Force Awakens-y is kind of the main reason why I think the story fell short. But that foundation being there is why I have so much hope for it to become the best story ever in Halo. That being said, though, it exceeded my expectations in terms of its sandbox and its gameplay, especially when it comes to the multiplayer and the open world. I wasn't expecting it to be as good as it ended up being. I was kind of a little bit hesitant of it becoming like a little too much like a Ubisoft game, even though I never publicly said that. But it definitely exceeded my expectations there. But I think the major thing that I take away from Halo Infinite is that when I became a fan of Halo, I could turn on my TV and see MLG Halo being played on cable television. I could go to the cafeteria at lunchtime in high school, and every single person I could see, I could talk to them about Halo 2, and they would know what I'm talking about, and we could like exchange gamer tags and play Halo. And for the last 10 years, it's kind of felt like being a Halo fan and being a Halo player kind of felt almost niche compared to like Destiny and Fortnite and Call of Duty and all that stuff. But now, like yesterday on Twitch, there's 200,000 people watching Halo. I go on Reddit every single day, like most people.
Over 250.
Yeah, and on the homepage of Reddit for every single day for the last month, within the top like 20, 30 posts, there's something about Halo. Now, it's not always good, but there's something about Halo. Halo is back, and I honestly didn't think that this could happen, but it's back. It's in the zeitgeist. It's the most popular game in the world right now. There was a Google Trends kind of data is beautiful post on Reddit I saw where it was like the #1 most searched thing in America for one day or 1 or 2 days, which is kind of mind blowing considering where it's come from. I said kind of a lot of negative stuff in this whole conversation, and that's only because like all of you guys said all the positive stuff first, and I didn't want to repeat what you guys were saying necessarily because we're already here for 2.5 hours. But what I'll end on is I heard almost everybody say that this is their game of the year, and it is my game of the year. But I think that we need to stop talking about Halo Infinite in terms of game of the year and honestly start talking about it as one of the best games of all time.
Ooh.
Oh, dang.
Bombshell.
Agree.
I know Travis was there too. So, all right.
And the more I play it and the more time passes, the more I'm certain that people will look back on this and be like, that was like one of the all-time greats.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to speak yet. It's coming.
I'm glad you think that.
When you add it all together, it's all time.
Yeah.
It's at that all time level.
So, Abe, why don't you finish the circle up here before I give my
Well, since nobody's taken any of my answers, this should be really easy at this point in time. I should just go. I just summarize it. I liked it a lot. One thing I do want to mention that really hasn't been brought up in all these conversations is I think we undersell the task that 343 had in front of them. When I think about this game, even 3 years ago, I remember being on Reset Era before I finally just left that place. But back in those days, I remember what's his name? Who used to always interact with the community. He would be on there and talking to us. And I remember thinking about, where the game was and kind of like what the expectations used to be, where, Halo used to lead the pack. And, when it came out, it was an event and I thought, for myself, I really thought it did lose a lot of its identity. I played the hell out of Halo 5's multiplayer. But the campaigns, to me, they lost a lot. And I think we take it for granted. We assume, hey, 343, we gave you this thing that's great. All you have to do is not mess it up and think it's like that. This is some easy task. But when you really, if you, as people who are part of the Halo community, I think we know this community sometimes, well, it's very divided. It's sometimes it's toxic. If you go to Reddit, you know what I mean. I just glance over there. And so 343 has this task of, and I think this is even more difficult than building a new IP, restoring the identity, somehow regaining the identity of the classics, which is something they were heavily criticized for, yet figuring out a way to modernize it and evolve this formula in a way that's interesting and that it feels like it's grown. And on that particular note, trying to thread that needle, I feel like they brought this divided base together probably as well as you can, not perfectly, because we know that's never going to happen. But I feel like they threaded that needle probably. I would have said it was an impossible task. I would have said, and going back to like what Travis was saying earlier, like they were going to have to either go all one way or all the other, and just and accept half the base is going to drop off, and figure out if they want to go for new people, or try to recapture the old. And somehow they've figured out how to do both. I mean, to a large extent, the Halo fans are like myself, feel like this really does capture the essence of CE and 3 to an extent, where it is a sandbox game again. It's not just a linear set piece story game. It's kind of trying to do both again. And on the aspect of its sandbox and how it combines that with extremely tight, gunplay mechanics, I can't think of another open world game that does that. That can, that ties the two things together. I mean, you can throw out all the names out there. There really isn't anything that's both as dynamic and as tight in terms of a moment-to-moment, gameplay loop. And from that standpoint, I do think 343 deserves credit, and this has been said, for setting a bar, for being best in class, for doing that particular thing. Now, when we look through it, we said there's a lot of things you can criticize it for, and yeah, we can. We can, as a Halo fan, it's easy for me to go, well, there wasn't a Escharum battle, there wasn't, get dropped on the beach moment where, the thing that kind of takes your breath away, outside of, walking outside of into the open world for the first time. So I think there's still some opportunities. We talked about the biomes, the story, stuff like that, but the core foundation of this game, I feel, is a 10 out of 10. The thing to build upon, I think they nailed that, and that's the thing they needed to do. And I think that if other things maybe were scrapped or cut to sacrifice to focus on getting that loop right, they did that. And to that extent, this is beyond what I would have expected. I'm going to go back before last year, because I think last year kind of was a gut punch and lowered everybody's expectations. But even going back before that, going back 2 and 3 years ago, I think this exceeds what I thought they could have pulled off. And I'm looking forward now to seeing where they can go, because I do think they can round out those edges. They got the foundation there. They can add the biomes. They can add the, maybe when they get rid of the Xbox One, they can add, a lot more big battles and, some other, types of set pieces and things like that. So, so really looking forward to seeing where this goes from there.
Yeah, man.
Well said. Yeah, and I think you guys covered, so I won't go long here. I think you guys covered.
Bring us home, Ains. Bring us home.
I think you covered all the core of it. A couple things I'll touch on is the emotional beats of this story, the focus on Chief, and the elements there, I think, were the best they've been in a Halo game, bar none. The cinematic presentation of those events was the best they've been, bar none. Mm-hmm. The gameplay, the mechanics, mechanically, as Miles complimented on, this game is incredible. I will take the argument that there's no shooter ever been made that feels mechanically as good as this game. I saw someone say Titanfall 2 in the chat. I disagree. Titanfall 2's movement is unique and different and stuff, but mechanically, gun to gun, moment to moment, step to step, Halo Infinite is above everything. And the fact that they managed, with Abe touched on it too, if you think about the weight of expectations 343 had on them for this game, everything from the multiplayer has to be perfect, the campaign has to be perfect, you have to fix Halo 5, it has to be Chief's story, you have to make the story meaningful, I mean, it has to do literally everything. Pay off your mortgage, solve your marriage. Like, it has to do everything. And as Abe said, you're talking about the eye hole of a needle they had to get through to land this, and they somehow managed to do it. The Halo community right now is together in a way that I don't think any of us have seen since Halo 3, I would argue. People are like, Halo Reach was great. I'm like, you weren't there at Reach's launch because Bungie was hated. Like,
you can spray it. What the?
Yeah, dude, they hated. Like, if someone says Halo Reach, now it's looked at as a great game, right? But if someone says it hasn't been as beloved since Halo Reach, I'm like, you obviously weren't there when Halo Reach launched, because that game was atrocious. Yeah. So I just think, in my opinion, I said in my review, I said, if you take off the nostalgia goggles, and I mean that sincerely, if you go back and play every Halo campaign, beginning to end, and nitpick exactly what we've done tonight, the story elements, the writing, the interactions, the cinematics, and everything, this is the best Halo campaign. I'll take that argument to anyone, period. There may not be some specific moments, like the Scarab moment in Halo 3 is amazing. There's certain moments that stand out in the other games, but overarching, beginning to end, story told, cinematics, writing, impact, I just think this is the best Halo campaign. And when you're talking about the best campaign out of a franchise so legendary as Halo, that says a lot. And that's without even touching on, obviously, the multiplayer, which we've all been addicted to since it dropped. So, I think they did a fantastic job.
Ains, we forgot to cover one thing.
Two things, actually. Go ahead.
I was ready to accept my new puppy at the end, and that was another slick. That was another slick job by 343. I was like, I'm good. Yeah, I think we're ready to roll forward with this one. So
so I know we've been going for a while, guys. So you can touch on this as little or as long as you like. But obviously, we're set up now for Atriox, the Endless, and the final scene, of course, is Chief with weapon, with the pilot, who no one touched on. We didn't talk about the pilot.
That's actually not the final scene.
Huh. Oh, okay, but you see, you have to throw wrenches, like as I'm trying to say stuff,
because
you can dodge a wrench.
Because I know where you're going. But yeah.
My point was being, whatever comments you want to add to kind of wrap us up here, in terms of, now that we set the foundation, the weapon is our new, girlfriend, and the pilot is there, whatever he turns into in the future. Atriox is alive, and the Endless are coming. What would you like to see? What are you hoping to see? What were your thoughts on how they ended that? So
thoughts?
This is open. However you guys want to close that.
Loved the ending because to me, that was the part of the story that I think was the most consistent and like solidified. They kind of were a little, they went a lot of different directions to get there, but when they got to the end and you realize this is what Halo is going to look like in the future, and the future's bright. And what I want in the future is I want them to add more stuff to the sandbox, put the Flood in there, get Prometheans in there, give us the Endless, do all that stuff, make the sandbox, give us a Spartan laser back, make it as cool as it can be. And I personally think they're probably going to give us other characters. I don't know about you guys, but the end credit scene seemed to me like we're going to be playing as Atriox, because it shows the perspective. You see the first person perspective of Atriox. They've been humanizing him. He's clearly got a lot that could ally him with Master Chief. I think he's going to be the next Arbiter, and I think we might play as him.
Dang, Travis, that's good.
If you rewatch that last cutscene, it really does seem like we're going to be Atriox at some point. So
who makes him the Arbiter? Who
meant like.
No, but
spiritually.
Premise,
the next arbiter and premise of he was a foe who becomes an ally because of the circumstances of the situation. I think him getting involved with the Endless is going to be a huge mistake.
So you think that's going to screw him?
Yep, I think he'll end up an ally to us. That's
Bro, I'm going to remember this conversation. I'm going to deem you a god if that happens, man.
Dude, because if you think about it, I don't even know why I do know because of the lore, but you would think the Banished and humanity would be friends. They both hated the Covenant. Humanity destroyed the Covenant essentially. Now they're totally, they've been all their power's been taken away. And you think that the Banished would be like, yeah, go humanity, fighting for our cause. Let's hang out. But it didn't go that way. So I think
it's Captain Cutter's fault.
Yep.
By the way, I forgot to mention that I really did miss the Arbiter. He's one of my favorite characters. I was hoping at least somewhere in the campaign he would make an appearance. And when
did.
we finished, when I finished the game, who said it? Locke? Stop it. When he finished the game and we still hadn't seen Arbiter, I was like, oh damn.
Fuck.
But anyway, okay. Who else on the ending?
Yeah.
I mean, the whole Atriox not being
I wrapped it
dead
up, baby.
thing was-
I wrapped it up.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard to top. I'll just say real quick, the Atriox not being dead was the worst twist ever, like the most
We all saw it
predictable.
coming.
We saw
Yeah,
that.
like we touched on this earlier, but when you don't see him die on screen after he beats Chief's ass, you're like, well, we're gonna see him at the end.
Yes.
End credit scene. But I like that concept that maybe the Endless are truly what their name suggests, and they are this unstoppable force. And once you open that can of worms, you're gonna need everyone coming together to try to get that closed. So
Are
that
they the White Walkers?
Do you guys? do you guys
Pretty
think
much.
Hopefully it doesn't end as
Yeah. Hopefully we don't see any major characters get shot down because they forgot the army was.
Did you guys get vibes that they were going to make time travel a part of Halo? 'Cause
Yes.
I'm really hoping
Yes.
they don't.
Yes,
I hope
that's
they don't.
that scared me when they're like talking about time travel. I was like, no, please,
Yeah,
God,
please
don't.
not.
Well,
Please don't go down that.
The MCU, the DC versus, they're all doing it. Please, just
Yeah.
that's gonna
I don't
depend.
think
That's
they will.
gonna depend on how they implement it, because apparently, offensive bias could be the one that opened up that portal for Chief to escape at the end.
right.
Because
Yes.
if you listen to the legendary ending, apparently he's activated once the Endless return.
Mhm.
So just that thought alone of bringing him back, something that we have never seen in games before and we've only read about or watched about, is just fucking incredible to me. Like just to know that possibility exists. So I don't know wherever they decide to go with this, man. It's gonna be incredible. I mean, I'm not gonna repeat everything you guys said, but just the mere fact that Atriox is out for this just total domination, and even at the cost of reactivating these beings that even the Forerunners were afraid of. I mean, it's mind blowing, man. I can't wait to see where they go with this. This is gonna be unbelievable.
I just hope John doesn't go back in time and meet his mom or anything like that.
No,
Back
please,
to the
God,
Future
no.
bullshit.
Yeah, I'll say this too: is like, though Halo Infinite didn't hit for me as much as it did for so many of you guys. Like, I don't think this is like the greatest shooter of all time. I don't think this is like one of the greatest games ever. I do appreciate that the
Shocker,
fan base.
Joe.
What is the greatest shooter of all time, Joe?
I think his favorite.
Killzone 2. Come on.
Resistance. Oh man. No,
Joe,
but
didn't
like,
you say your favorite shooter is Citizen Kane?
yes. Thank
Yeah.
you, Travis. Yeah. You also compared Bloodborne to DMC, so knock it off. I do appreciate. My point is the hack and slash. Travis, mute your goddamn mic. You sound like a fucking fool. Here's the thing. I appreciate, and what I love is that you guys think that the hardcore base of Halo is in a united voice of like, this is freaking awesome. And I love when I see fan bases, cheer this thing on or their thing on. So that's what I'm really liking here, because to me, I'm looking at this foundation going, this is a really good foundation for what can be something that stands next to what we think of, a Destiny, right? Or like an Apex Legends, in terms of games that have these, communities that are everlasting, and these games that are in some facets ever changing. So yeah, I'm
Endless,
really
you might
happy for
say?
you guys.
Sorry, Luke.
It was a bad joke. I said he said ever changing. I said, do you mean endless?
Oh yeah.
It's not funny when you say it twice.
No,
It wasn't even funny the first time, but
Fair.
One thing I'll say is in terms of where the campaign can go from the ending, I really love how they're kind of hyping up this showdown with the Endless. My concern is how they're going to deliver it, though. I really want them to have like vignette type stuff, like Luke was talking about, like smaller, condensed, like Hive Busters type content. But I want the Endless kind of the the continuation of this story to be a Halo Infinite level campaign, and with all of this kind of free real estate that they have to draw from in terms of characters and story, like Osiris is not in this game, Blue Team's not in this game, Arbiter's faction of the Covenant's not in this game, Flood's not in this game, Aatrox barely in this game. Like, there's so many places they can go. I really hope that they kind of pick it from those spots and give us Hivebuster like things that kind of set up where these people are in the universe, so that when the Endless campaign comes and it's huge and massive and it's the same scope as Halo Infinite's campaign, that they can like all come together and like in like an Avengers portal scene and like team up and fight the Endless or something like that. I just want the Endless campaign or the continuation of this main story arc to be delivered in the same way that it began, and not like little pieces here and there, even though I do want those little pieces in other ways, if that makes sense.
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
I think you are going to get that scene, 7 years from now,
The portal
where they
scene.
all fight the Endless, because I think we're in for some bad fights over the next
Yeah.
few campaigns where we lose to the Endless. And I think that's kind of the goal. The hope is to have this big epic moment after some smaller stories are told, and I'm there for it. I'm excited for it.
Mhm. And the more
I do
time we
not wanna
spend with those characters, the higher the stakes become for that showdown.
Yeah. I will say, if I have to watch Master Chief get bodied the way he did again, that was brutal. That hurt my soul.
But I think the thing is like we talked about at length that there's some clunkiness getting there, but the exciting thing is now the table is set, and they got the two things going on here. I care about the characters again, I care about the story again, but I don't know where it's going, and that's kind of exciting. I think they've reset the table. They can go in many different directions.
Yeah.
I think all the things you guys just talked about make sense, and all of them could be done well. And I think they understand now character development, right? They took that feedback. That's the one thing I think they did well in this particular game. Again, for all the plot point, issues maybe I did think they executed some of those scenes really well, and they did a much better job giving motivations, building up these characters. We knew who they were, and as long as they continue to do that now, it's exciting. I think it's a fresh slate for them to kind of go in any direction they want at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I think the best words I heard all year in an interview was when Joseph Staten said, "Yes, I'm now the full-time creative director." I was like, "Thank God!" Thank you. So I think Travis mentioned this earlier, but one of the things I really want to see, I agree with all you guys. I think they can go in all these directions. I'd love to see bite-sized stories that lead to a bigger arc, right, over time. One thing I really do hope somehow is we talked about Flood, Prometheans, Banished, and all these Covenant, and all these different types of different encounters. I do want to see one day a sandbox where literally we're fighting all of those things at the same time. Utter chaos.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just bring it all together. Or give me like a really extensive open world firefight mode or something. Just something to utilize everything, at once. I just think that would be so much fun.
And just watch the Prometheans get obliterated. Yeah.
I remember on our first Halo. I remember on your first Halo roundtable, I mentioned that when we were like guessing how the campaign would be. I'm like, what if there was like different biomes and each biome had a different enemy type, on the same ring? That would have been really cool. But I agree, man. That would.
Yeah.
I can't.
All right, guys. Well, we've been going for a while. We've covered, I think, a lot of aspects of this. Go ahead and close it out. Is there anything? Just get one last call for you guys. Anything you've thought of, you wanted to add before we close out? Go for
Luke
it.
sucks.
Thank you, 343. Seriously.
Yes.
Also, thank you guys.
Yes. Actually, in all seriousness, guys, I got feedback directly that 343, at least one, I don't know who or what, but the 343 employee did check out our last roundtable and really enjoyed it. So, so that's great. If any of you are tuning in, Luke nailed it. Thank you. This game is amazing. We're going to be playing it for years and years to come, obviously. And the multiplayer, we're literally getting ready to jump off so we can go play the multiplayer. It's just
if I could end on one note,
every single night. So, Joe, thanks for interrupting my message to 343. You goddamn, who invited this Sony loving? No, I'm kidding. But no, seriously, thank you. Go ahead, Joe.
If I could end on one note, everybody in this chat, everybody here, what my good friend Bobby taught me is if you really love something, tell that developer thank you. So really go out there, tweet them, tell them how much this game means to you, how much it's impacted you, how much you're thankful for them, because it really does. People will see it. So trust me, go out there, tell them thank you.
Agreed.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. Guys, I want to thank you guys for coming out. I know this has been a long conversation. Honestly, we could talk for another couple hours. I've been doing it in party chats for the last month plus. But thank you guys for coming out. I'm not going to go around to each one to tell. Everyone who's watching this knows who you guys are. I will make sure all your details are in the description. So please check out, obviously, all these great people's content in various forms. We appreciate it. And I know, again, I'm preaching to the choir here. These guys know this. So thanks for tuning in. Chat, you've been awesome. Everyone who's been hanging out with us on and off through the night and catching this later. If there's anything you'd like to see or we didn't cover, leave a comment. I'm sure there's plenty of stuff we could have touched on more but didn't. That's about it. All right. With that, we are out of here. Thanks again. You're awesome. We will see you next time. Peace. Might help if I have the outro ready at some point, right?
Oh,